Chapter 519. The Baroque design of the restaurant was integrated with the surrounding shops, exuding a luxurious and restrained atmosphere. Even if they weren't here to eat expensive food, there were still many people who stopped to take pictures. Seizing the opportunity, Lin Ruoshi quietly pulled her hand out of Yang Cheng's. The blush on her face faded as if nothing had happened. Yang Cheng secretly admired the natural acting talent of women. Just as he was about to enter the restaurant with Stern and the others, a small figure ran in front of him and blocked his way. "Uncle, do you want to buy flowers?" A boy asked crisply in English with a French accent. Yang Cheng lowered his head. The little boy in front of him was about 10 years old. Because he hadn't reached puberty yet, his body was particularly small and thin. He had a head of yellow hair, thick eyebrows, big eyes, a dignified appearance, and freckles on his cheeks. He looked very obedient. The boy was holding a few bouquets of flowers tied with a red string. These flowers weren't roses, tulips, or lilies that were commonly seen in flower shops. Instead, they were flowers that could be found in flower beds and roadsides all over France. Simply put, they were wildflowers picked from roadsides. Without waiting for Yang Cheng to speak, Lin Ruoshi squatted down and approached the boy. With a gentle smile, she asked, "Little friend, what flowers are you selling? How much?" Looking at Lin Ruoshi's rare, gentle expression, Yang Cheng rubbed his eyes and smiled bitterly. This woman hadn't visited the orphanage for a long time. It seemed that the hidden love was about to overflow in Paris. Lin Ruoshi was usually intimidating because of her cold temperament. But once she met children, her whole body would be like melted chocolate, which was very popular with children. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so popular in the orphanage in Zhonghai. Sure enough, the little boy's bright eyes flashed with a few traces of splendor. He said with a tender voice, "Sister, you're so beautiful." Hearing the boy's praise, Lin Ruoshi smiled even more brightly. She reached out and touched the boy's curly yellow hair intimately. "You're also very cute. What's your name?" "Harry. My name is Harry." "Sister, are you a foreigner?" Little Harry asked. "Yes, I'm from Huaxia," Lin Ruoshi said. "Where is Huaxia?" Harry asked curiously. Lin Ruoshi thought for a moment and said, "Somewhere far away. You have to take a plane to get there." "Plane?" Harry said excitedly. "Sister, is it fun to take a plane? I always wanted Dad to take me on a plane, but he was so busy that he seldom took me out to play. But Dad said he's going to take me to Disneyland in a few days. We can watch a flying car show there." I don't know if flying cars are like airplanes. Have you seen one before?" Lin Ruoshi frowned slightly as the boy's English was actually French. She looked to Yang Cheng for help. Yang Cheng was helpless. It would be great if this woman's attitude towards children was half the way she treated him, but he still translated for Harry. Lin Ruoshi understood and continued. "Sister hasn't seen Disney's flying car show, but I believe it's very good. Harry will definitely have a good time." Harry nodded vigorously. "I think so too. When the time comes, Mom will go too. Our family can go on a pirate ship and ride a roller coaster. But I'm a little scared. I don't know if the roller coaster is high. What if Dad says I'm a coward? Little guy, didn't you say you were going to sell flowers? Why are you talking about roller coasters?" Looking at Harry mumbling to himself, Yang Cheng couldn't stand it anymore. Lin Ruoshi turned around and glared at him. "Why are you interrupting? The child is talking to me, not to you. Why are you venting your anger on a child?" "I'm not venting my anger on him. Don't we still need to eat lunch?" Yang Cheng was depressed. "If you want to eat, go in and eat first. I'm not stopping you." Lin Ruoshi was dissatisfied with Yang Cheng's impatience. She smiled at Harry and said, "Harry, don't mind this bad uncle. If you have anything to say, just say it to Sister." Harry blinked and stuck his tongue out at Yang Cheng. He made a face and said to Lin Ruoshi, "Sister is the best." Yang Cheng felt like his lungs were going to explode. This little brat, calling Lin Ruoshi sister and me uncle. Doesn't that mean I'm Lin Ruoshi's elder? However, Harry didn't want to continue talking. After Yang Cheng reminded him, he picked up the bouquet in his hand. "Sister, what flowers do you like?" The bouquet in front of them was simply a bunch of wild flowers. Lin Ruoshi didn't recognize any of them. She randomly picked up a bunch of blue-purple flowers and asked with a smile, What flower is this? It's pretty. I'll take this one. Harry beamed. It's only €1. Yang Chung clicked his tongue. Little brat, you're selling roadside flowers for €1. You'll definitely become a small profiteer in the future. Why are you still standing here? You can enter the restaurant now. Lin Ruashi turned around and said to Yang Chung coldly. She then took out her wallet from her bag and took out a dark brown €5 note. Lin Ruashi took the flowers but didn't give the money to Harry. Instead, she asked, Sister can't buy the flowers, but can Harry tell Sister how you earn money from selling flowers? If Harry tells Sister, I'll give all €5 to Harry. Such a young child was selling wildflowers on the street and trying his luck to earn money. Lin Ruashi couldn't help but wonder if the child had been kidnapped and was being manipulated by some illegal gang. Harry stared at the €5 note in Lin Ruashi's hand and replied softly, I saw that one of Dad's socks was torn. Dad was still wearing it, so I wanted to buy a sock for Dad. But I wanted to give Dad a surprise, so I couldn't ask Mom for pocket money. So I thought of selling flowers. The boy's English wasn't very good. Maybe it was because one of his parents spoke English in his daily life, so he didn't learn it systematically. He had a strong French accent, but he could still vaguely understand some simple words when they were put together. After listening to Harry's reason, Lin Ruashi's eyes were filled with love. She patted Harry's curly hair again and placed the €5 note in Harry's hand. Thank you, sister, Harry smiled brightly. Now I have enough money. You can't buy socks one by one. You can only buy a pair. Lin Ruashi scratched the bridge of Harry's nose and said with a smile. Harry's eyes widened. He was very disappointed when he heard this unfortunate news. Can't I just buy one? I thought I could buy them separately. Faced with the child's innocent expression, Lin Ruashi couldn't resist at all. She took out a red €10 note from her wallet and said, Sister will give you another €10. The socks that Harry bought for Dad are really expensive. I didn't know that socks in France are so expensive. Harry was delighted at first, but then he was discouraged and didn't take it. Harry wants to buy a Santa Claus sock for Dad. That sock can hold presents. Yang Chung heard this and laughed. Christmas sock? Your dad's feet are really big. Dad's feet have always been big, Harry argued stubbornly. Lin Ruashi didn't laugh at Harry's choice, but she understood why he spent so much money to buy a pair of socks. It was a Christmas present. Although Christmas had long passed, it wasn't a big deal for children to pick a time. This money is for Harry. Treat it as a gift from Sister. Lin Ruashi stuffed the €10 note into Harry's hand. Harry stammered, Mom told me that I can't just take other people's gifts. Looking at the little boy's distressed expression, Lin Ruashi thought for a moment and said, How about this? Harry kisses Sister. Treat it as a trade. When Yang Chung heard this, he immediately wanted to cry. He pulled a long face and said, Wifey, you can't play like this? Why do you have to pay for this little brat to kiss you? As your husband, if I want to kiss you, I have to approve it for a long time, and it still doesn't pass. Lin Ruashi looked left and right at the passers-by. Fortunately, no one noticed this guy's loud shouting. She stared at Yang Chung with her almond-shaped eyes and blushed. Why are you shouting? Why are you arguing with a child? An adult does such shameless things all day long. The children in the orphanage are much more likable than you. You can kiss me if you want, but I'll think about it when you're as obedient as Harry. Yang Chun was on the verge of breaking down after hearing what she said. At this time, Harry moved closer to Lin Ruashi's cheek and kissed her. Sister, I kissed you. Is that right? Harry said happily. Lin Ruashi nodded. Harry is so obedient. This time, our deal is successful. Harry can go buy socks for Dad without worry. Harry nodded excitedly and stuffed the €15 into his trouser pocket. It was bulging there, and Harry guessed that it was the coins he got from selling flowers. Sister, Uncle, goodbye. Harry waved at Lin Ruashi and Yang Chung respectively. Lin Ruashi watched Harry run away and stood up. She waited until Harry ran far away before turning around and entering the dining room. Yang Chung couldn't help but laugh. Since you like children so much, why don't you just have one? Lin Ruashi's heart trembled. Although she really liked children, she didn't dare to think about having one herself. She was so shy that she didn't know what to say. She just pretended that she didn't hear anything and walked into the dining room to look for the Stern siblings. Yang Chung didn't care, but he suddenly had some doubts in his heart. Although it was not very realistic to have a child with Lin Ruoxi, after all, they hadn't even shared a room. But when he had sex with Xiang Wei, Mo Qianni, Lu Mingyu, and An Xin, he actually didn't take any safety measures. Especially for Qiang Wei, if she could really have a child, it would be extremely satisfying. Moreover, she didn't have the hidden danger of having enemies in the underworld like before. However, it seemed that as his strength grew, his ability to have children was inexplicably hindered. Otherwise, Yang Chen couldn't understand why in the past years, only 17 had been pregnant with his child. He didn't always have a foolproof plan every time he did it with a woman. Could it be really because of the influence of the Godstone on him? Thinking of these things, Yang Chen couldn't help but have a headache. Chapter 520. The interior of the restaurant was decorated with a medieval, gloomy atmosphere. Even during the day, the lighting was as dim as night. Incense candles were lit everywhere, as well as rose petals that seemed to be placed randomly, but were full of artistic beauty. Old newspapers and periodicals, old-fashioned phonographs, posters of outdated celebrities, and all kinds of accessories that seemed to have nothing to do with the restaurant were ingeniously arranged around the restaurant. Lin Ruoxi didn't take much effort to find the Stern siblings. Because it was already past dinner time and there weren't many customers, the waiter standing beside the two who were ordering was particularly conspicuous. "Hey, Miss Lin, we're here." Alice waved her hand excitedly. "The butter garlic lobster here is very famous. We've already ordered one. Should we order another one? The beef here is also flown in from Kobe, Japan. It's very fresh, and the beef stew with mushrooms is also very good." Stern grinned and introduced. Lin Ruoxi walked to the seat opposite the two and sat down. She looked a little helpless. "I'm not very familiar with food. You guys can order." "Miss Lin, you're such a kind person," Alice said, feeling touched as she clutched her chest with both hands. Lin Ruoxi looked at her mischievous look and chuckled. Miss Alice is also a person who is easily satisfied. As they became more familiar with each other, Lin Ruoxi also relaxed and made a joke. "Ruoxi baby, you're looking down on them too much." Yang Chung sat next to Lin Ruoxi and said gloomily, "They're not people who are easily satisfied. Do you know how much the 2 dishes they just ordered cost? They're completely extorting us. Do you think they ordered casually?" Hey, Mr. Yang. Miss Lin has already promised us. Do you want Miss Lin to go back on her words?" Stern said with a sense of justice. Yang Chung picked up a knife from the table and was about to throw it at Stern's head. Stern hurriedly got up and made a Bruce Lee pose. He exclaimed loudly and even wiped his nose. He looked at Yang Chung provocatively, daring him to throw the knife if he had the guts. "Enough. What are you guys doing?" Lin Ruoxi almost fainted when she saw this scene. It was one thing for Yang Chung to scare Stern, but this Englishman even cooperated and filmed an action movie. Fortunately, the waiters in such a high-class restaurant were well-trained. When they saw the customers making such a magical move, they still stood aside with a smile and waited for their orders. Lin Ruoxi smiled apologetically at the waiter and signaled for him to serve the dishes according to Stern's instructions. Only then did the waiter respectfully retreat. Naturally, Yang Chung wouldn't really throw a knife at him. After scaring Stern, he curled his lips and said, "The lobsters here are shipped from Canada, and the price of one is more than 500 euros. If you want 4 servings of Kobe beef, it'll be at least 800 euros. This meal will cost you tens of thousands of Huaxia dollars, and that's not including the drinks." Lin Ruoxi was stunned. She really didn't know that the 2 dishes ordered by the Stern siblings were so expensive. TSK. Mr. Yang seems to have eaten quite a lot. He's actually so familiar with the price. Alice looked at Yang Chung with disdain. "Mr. Yang has eaten it himself, so you won't let your wife try it? Women don't like men who only think about saving money." When Lin Ruoxi heard this, her pretty face turned red. She asked doubtfully, "Miss Alice, how do you know that this person and I have that kind of relationship?" Alice chuckled. "Miss Lin, when you're with Mr. Yang, Whether it's the words or the look in your eyes, anyone who observes carefully can see that your relationship isn't ordinary. And you don't feel like you're in a relationship. It's more like you're a family. Miss Lin, you're too confident in your acting skills. My dear, and I found out about your relationship last night, Stern echoed. Haha, treating you guys to this meal is worth it. It turns out that you guys also know how to say nice things. Yangcheng was happy to hear this. He leaned back on the chair and said leisurely. Lin Ruoshi stretched out her hand and pinched Yangcheng's thigh. She wanted to rush out the door. She thought that her relationship with Yangcheng would be hard to find out, but it turned out that it was her illusion all along. According to this, maybe many people in the company also found out that something was amiss, but they just didn't dare to say it. What are you afraid of? It'll be made public sooner or later. Yangcheng felt helpless towards a woman's shyness. Although Lin Ruoshi also knew that it was like that, she still felt uncomfortable that something that she thought was well hidden was easily seen through by others. Miss Lin, do you know? Alice leaned closer to Lin Ruoshi and said mysteriously, there are two things in this world that people often try hard to hide but can't hide. Huh? Lin Ruoshi didn't understand. The first thing is poverty. No matter how hard poor people try, they can't change the fact that it's not a sin, but sometimes it's more terrifying than a sin. Alice's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of mockery. She continued, the second thing is that a person loves someone's heart. A burning sensation burned Lin Ruoshi's ears. Alice's words were like a thin needle that pierced into her heart, causing Lin Ruoshi to lose her cold protective shell. Oh yeah, Miss Lin blushed. It seems that Alice's guess is right. Alice smiled coquettishly and threw herself into Stern's arms, kissing him a few times in celebration. Lin Ruoshi touched her cheeks with one hand. Her cheeks were as red as an apple. She lowered her head and pursed her lips. This time, it was her turn to take a knife and fly over. Although Yangcheng heard Alice's words, he didn't continue to tease Lin Ruoshi. He only quietly watched Lin Ruoshi's reaction. Lin Ruoshi also secretly looked at Yangcheng from the corner of her eyes. When she found that Yangcheng was looking at her with a smile that wasn't a smile, Lin Ruoshi quickly turned her head away, not daring to look anymore. For the rest of the time, other than Stern and Alice, who continued to discuss where to go after Fashion Week, Yangcheng quietly drank the restaurant's special lemon black tea and looked out the window at the passers-by and street view. Lin Ruoshi sat quietly in her seat, sometimes talking to the Stern siblings, but most of the time, she was in a daze. After more than half an hour, the lobster and beef were finally served. Stern also ordered a bottle of 30-year-old Lafite, which made Yangcheng nag again. However, Lin Ruoshi didn't mind. No matter how much money she spent, it would only be for a few days. She didn't have as much money as Yangcheng, but she felt that she was much more generous than Yangcheng. Because of the butter and cream in Italian food, although Lin Ruoshi felt that the lobster and beef were very tender and delicious, she felt that her stomach was bloated after eating a few mouthfuls. The Stern siblings didn't have big appetites either. Although they were very picky, they weren't big eaters. In the end, Yangcheng, who didn't order anything at all, stuffed half of the lobster and most of the remaining beef into his stomach. Finally, he burped and said to the smirking Stern, "Wastrel. All right, it's not like it's not delicious. Why do you always make life difficult for Stern just because of some money for food?" Lin Ruoshi said with a frown. "Don't you know that your husband, came from selling mutton skewers?" Yangcheng said shamelessly. "How can I compare to capitalists and nobles like you?" Lin Ruoshi gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, "Can't you restrain yourself a little? I want to feel embarrassed for you. Are you mocking us? You're obviously the richest, so why is it that you're the most humble one in the end?" No matter what, it was time to pay the bill. After the waiter printed the bill, he looked at the customers on the table and placed it in front of the manliest, Yangcheng. Yangcheng looked at the bill in front of him. 2,486 euros. Yangcheng blinked to make sure he didn't see it wrong. He immediately pushed the bill in front of Lin Ruoshi and said with a smile, "Honey, you do it." Lin Ruoshi seemed to know that Yangcheng didn't have any money on him. She took out her wallet from her bag and took out 5 purple 500 euro notes. She then added a yellow 200 euro note as a tip and handed it to the waiter. The waiter's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw the huge stack of purple 500 euros in Lin Ruashi's wallet. Most of the customers here paid with a card, and it was rare to see a lady like Lin Ruashi carrying a huge pile of cash. In fact, Lin Ruashi didn't mean to pay with cash. It was just that with her character, she had to sign the bill after paying with a card. If she found it troublesome, she would just leave quickly. Before leaving the table, Lin Ruashi didn't forget to take the bouquet of bluish-purple flowers that she had bought for 15 euros and stuffed it in her bag. Although it wasn't something precious, Lin Ruashi didn't want to throw it away. Faced with Lin Ruashi's straightforward style of spending money, the Stern siblings kept on praising her as they left the restaurant. Although spending 20,000 Huaxia dollars for lunch was a bit extravagant, Lin Ruashi didn't feel that it was too expensive. Instead, she felt a little embarrassed by the siblings. Just as the four of them were about to return to the parking lot and head to the Louvre to watch the afternoon fashion show, a skinny white man in a short-sleeved shirt and ripped jeans suddenly ran up to them. "I wonder if this beautiful lady has the time." The man's face looked like it was only covered with a layer of skin. His bones were protruding, and his eyes were sunken with dark circles. His voice was very hoarse. At first glance, he looked like a drug addict. Lin Ruashi subconsciously took a step back and unconsciously stuck close to Yang Chung. "Who are you?" Chapter 521. "Madam, please take a look at this." The man suddenly took out a bouquet of different colors from behind him, all tied with a red string. "Madam, you should remember who these flowers belong to, right?" Lin Ruashi's gaze froze. Of course, she remembered that these flowers were sold by little Harry just now. She suddenly thought of something and asked coldly, "What do you mean? What did you do to Harry?" He, the man laughed weirdly. "That child is now in the hands of our boss. Our boss would like to invite Madam and a few of you to come with me for a talk and take what we need. At that time, of course, the child will be safe and sound." Not only did Yang Chung and Lin Ruashi understand what was going on, the Stern siblings also understood what this meant even though they didn't see Harry kidnapping, extortion. "You guys are really good at seizing business opportunities. A child selling flowers and plants can also be targeted by you guys," Yang Chung said with a weird smile. "But I believe you guys are also clear that the child has nothing to do with us. Are you so sure that we will go with you for the child?" "Yes, of course. When the lady bought the flowers just now, I saw the sincerity in the lady's eyes." The man licked his chapped lips and smiled evilly. "A kind lady like her would never leave that poor little guy alone." "That's right. You're right." Looking at the man's almost distorted face and dark expression, Alice hugged Stern tightly, not knowing if she was afraid or unwilling to look at his ugly appearance. After Stern realized the situation, he smiled awkwardly and said, "I don't think we need to participate in this kind of thing. Mr. Yang, they are looking for Miss Lin. You guys have a deep relationship. You two should go. Shouldn't a man protect a woman at a time like this? In order to protect my Alice, let's go first." After saying some seemingly righteous and daring words, Stern planned to leave the scene with Alice in his arms. However, before Stern could take a step, two tall black men in leather jackets suddenly blocked their way. The skinny man laughed a few times. "Don't be in such a hurry to leave. It won't be good for anyone if this kind of thing is leaked. Of course, it's not that I don't trust the two of you, but my boss said that it's better to go together." Stern saw that there was no way to escape, so he immediately turned around and patted his chest with righteous indignation. "Mr. Yang, I think this is the best time to test our friendship. We will definitely stand behind you and Miss Lin and support you in spirit to save that child." Yang Chung couldn't be bothered to deal with this fickle fellow. Instead, he looked at Lin Ruashi, whose face was as cold as ice, and waited for Lin Ruashi's decision. Of course, he had nothing to be afraid of. Instead, he was happy. It was much more interesting than watching a fashion show. Moreover, Yang Chung didn't think that this was an ordinary kidnapping and extortion case. He was more interested in what was hidden behind it. "Let's go. Take us to your boss." Lin Ruashi walked up from behind Yang Chung and said coldly to the skinny man, To be able to encounter a filthy and dirty child kidnapping case on the world's most beautiful pedestrian street could be considered a special program for a trip to Paris. It was just that this program was like a has-been star suddenly popping out to sing a has-been song, which made people nauseous. The skinny man led the way in front, and the two black men behind him. They bypassed a relatively unpopular intersection and walked toward a narrow passage next to an antique shop. At this time, the sunlight was blocked by a few shops. After passing through the passage, a small open space surrounded by houses appeared. Due to the lack of sunlight all year round, the place was covered with moss, and there were some potholes that contained rainwater. "Where's Harry?" Lin Ruashi found that the surroundings were empty. Apart from the cold air, there was not a single person in sight. The skinny man suddenly turned around and smiled strangely. "Don't worry, madam. Please look above your head." As Lin Ruashi looked up, the stern siblings also looked up at the sky. Only Yang Chung shook his head with a hint of helplessness and mockery in his eyes. He remained unmoved. Suddenly, a layer of scarlet net-like objects fell from the sky. Lin Ruashi's watery eyes widened as she looked at the incredible computer-generated object that shrouded the space where she was. Following that, a voluptuous woman wrapped in a black leather coat also fell from the sky. Like a sudden flash, she landed in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. It was a tall woman with a head full of brown hair and bright red pupils. Her face was flirtatious, but there were many wrinkles on her face. It was obvious that she was not young. She wore a black leather windbreaker, and the ravine on her chest was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. However, this woman's strange appearance did not scare Lin Ruashi. This was because Lin Ruashi's attention was completely attracted by little Harry in the woman's arms. "What did you do to Harry?" Lin Ruashi asked coldly. Harry's originally round little face was extremely pale. His eyes were closed in pain as he fell into a deep sleep in the woman's arms. The girl said in hoarse English with a charming smile, "Don't worry, he's still alive. Such delicious food. I can't bear to finish it immediately." After saying that, she licked her plump lips with her dark red tongue. Food. Lin Ruashi finally realized that the situation was not good. The woman in front of her seemed to be unusual. Subconsciously, Lin Ruashi stuck close to Yang Chung again. Yang Chung smiled and reached out to hug Lin Ruashi's shoulder. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. She's just bluffing." The stern siblings, who were behind them, were quite frightened by the strange woman in front of them. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to them, they wanted to retreat through the passage. However, before they could take a few steps back, an invisible wall blocked their way. "Ow!" Stern cried out in pain and touched the back of his head that had hit the invisible wall. He complained gloomily, "Damn it! Are you the devil? What's happening here?" The woman chuckled. "It's useless. This is a space that is temporarily isolated from the outside world. People outside can't see or hear anything in here. Who are you? Do you want money? Let Harry go. I'll give you money." Lin Ruashi mustered up her courage and looked straight at the woman. The woman, on the other hand, looked like she was admiring a precious work of art. She kept looking up and down at Lin Ruashi's body, face, and eyes full of excitement. "It's really God's masterpiece, guys. I like this body very much." "You've done well," the woman said to the skinny man beside her. Guys laughed sinisterly. "Lord Viscount, I want that golden-haired man's body. This body of mine is about to rot." As he spoke, he pointed at Stern, who was looking around for a way to escape. "Humph. Take it if you want it. However, I'll keep that silver-haired woman's body for the other old women in the clan. It should be a good gift." The woman glanced at Alice and sneered. Hearing the woman's conversation with guys, Lin Ruashi frowned. She couldn't understand at all. What body? What clan? At this moment, Yang Chung finally spoke. He excitedly gestured with his thumb and asked, "What about me? Both Stern's and Alice's bodies are useful. You guys also want my wife's body. What do you plan to do with mine?" The woman was slightly surprised by Yang Cheng's calmness. She sneered. "Human, do you know what you're talking about? However, you don't need to know. I can be merciful and tell you that in your current state, you're only fit to be food for my servants." As soon as she finished speaking, the woman opened one hand towards Yang Cheng and the others. A pink mist suddenly flourished. The mist was like pollen, passing through the entire space that was sealed by the transparent wall. Before the four of them could react, it had already been sucked into their noses. Almost at the same time, the siblings, Lin Ruoshi and Stern, closed their eyes and fell to the ground in a daze. Yang Cheng didn't let Lin Ruoshi lie directly on the ground. Instead, he waited for the siblings to lie down before supporting Lin Ruoshi and placing her on top of them so that their clothes wouldn't get dirty. Seeing that nothing had happened to Yang Cheng, the woman, guys, and the two black men were all shocked and speechless. "You? Who are you? Impossible. How is this possible?" The woman still couldn't believe that Yang Cheng wasn't affected by the mist. Yang Cheng turned around and shrugged. "Although I don't know exactly what you do, you seem to have chosen the wrong prey." A hint of viciousness appeared in the woman's eyes. "Nonsense. Kill him." Following the command, the eyes of the two black men behind Yang Cheng suddenly turned scarlet as if they were filled with blood. Following that, they grinned, revealing their sharp fangs. Roaring, they pounced towards Yang Chen's neck and the back of his heart like lightning. However, before they could reach 3 feet behind Yang Cheng, the two strong black men seemed to be frozen in the air. The two men spat out blood at the same time. Then, they were pushed back by a huge and inexplicable force. When the two men landed heavily on the ground, the woman who saw everything was still in disbelief. Her eyes widened in shock. It's fine for a hunter to hunt in the forest, but if he chooses the wrong prey, then he might become the prey himself. Yang Cheng smiled. "Don't look down on people." The corner of the woman's mouth twitched. "Although I don't know who you are, you've disrupted my plan. Today, I'll leave your life here." After saying that, the lady revealed even sharper fangs. Her pair of scarlet eyes looked as if blood was about to flow out. Her brown hair danced in the wind along with her aura. Her body that was wrapped in a leather windbreaker began to swell, revealing her explosive muscles. Yang Cheng narrowed his eyes. Bloodbreed. Chapter 522. It was just a guess. After all, this guy called guys had the faint aura of a vampire. But now it seemed that these guys were indeed vampires, and a special one at that. Compared to the graceful nobles from the Middle Ages, these vampires were even more brutal and ugly. At this time, the black men at the back also stood up, and a murderous aura around them was especially thick, like shadows immersed in the dark night. This time, Yang Cheng was a little surprised. He had shattered their hearts just now, which should be the weakness of vampires. These two guys should be dead. Were they not vampires? The middle-aged lady called Viscount threw Harry in her arms to Guys, who was hunched over beside her. Guys caught little Harry nimbly and immediately retreated to the side, as if he was watching a good show. "You've interrupted our afternoon tea and dessert time, you damned bug," the lady muttered. Her right hand gradually glowed red, and in the blink of an eye, a blood-red knight's sword was already in her hand. This was not the first time Yang Cheng had seen vampires using blood spells. This confirmed his guess that these people should be vampires, but they were a little special. Even if their hearts were shattered, they could still come back to life. This is going to be troublesome, Yang Cheng thought. In the next second, the Viscount's figure appeared right above Yang Cheng, and the scarlet sword went straight for the top of Yang Cheng's head. Yang Cheng's left hand seemed slow, but it was actually fast as it met the tip of the sword. The sharp blood sword could cut through gold and jade, but as soon as it touched Yang Cheng's hand, it shattered into a bloody flower. The Viscount's figure swayed, and she returned to her original position. She looked at her right hand in disbelief. Her blood sword was shattered by a human's hand. Together, the Viscount let out a shrill whistle and commanded the two black vampire servants to pounce at Yang Cheng once more. This time, the female vampire directly condensed a bloody claw on her fingertips and used all her strength to claw at Yang Cheng ruthlessly like a shroud of black shadow. The strength of the blood race was astonishing to begin with. Normally, blood race members with noble titles were monsters that had lived for at least several hundred years. At this moment, When she used all her strength, even though she was only a woman, she could exert a pressure of several dozen tons. Bang! A muffled noise shook the space around them. The Viscount's bloody claws grabbed Yang Cheng's shoulder tightly, producing a deafening sound. The ground beneath Yang Cheng's feet had sunk into a huge pit. To the Viscount's horror, Yang Cheng just looked at him indifferently. He was not moved at all, let alone injured. This made the Viscount, who thought that he could remove one of Yang Cheng's arms, feel that the contrast was too great. For a moment, he forgot what to do next. Let's see if you can still die this time, Yang Cheng said lightly. Suddenly, he turned around and kicked at the chests of the two black men who were about to sneak up on him from behind without batting an eyelid. Although the two black men were already very fast, in Yang Cheng's eyes, they were no different from turtles crawling. Before they could react, Yang Cheng's feet had already kicked their chests. The two figures smashed into an invisible wall like missiles. The places where their chests were kicked caved in. It looked like their chests and internal organs had been kicked into smithereens. However, as if the two black blood servants had the help of animation special effects, their chests that had been kicked just now actually bulged again at a visible speed. Although they spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood, the two black men had indeed recovered and stood up shakily once more. How can this be? Yang Cheng frowned. Although the strength of these people was not enough to pose a threat to him, such tenacious vitality had already exceeded his understanding of the Blood Clan. Seeing that Yang Cheng was lost in thought, the Viscount immediately felt that this was a good opportunity. She opened her bloody mouth, and her fangs were about to bite Yang Cheng's neck. Stop dreaming. How could Yang Cheng not know? Without turning his head, he directly shot out a stream of restoration scripture, Xiantian True Qi. The Xiantian True Qi from this palm was not trivial. Even though it was less than 10% of Yang Cheng's strength, it was completely incomparable to the strength he had used during his battle with Ares. But in her long life, the Viscount had never suffered such a blow. She only felt an irresistible force invading her chest, directly stirring up her internal organs. A tragic cry of pain came from the Viscount's mouth. The Xiantian True Qi produced a violent explosion in her body, grinding the already rotten internal organs of the Blood Clan into pieces. Yang Cheng did not relax. After watching the woman gradually fall to the ground, as he expected, after 20 seconds or so, the female Blood Clan, who had fallen to the ground and could not get up, raised her head again. Damn it, you can't kill me. I will definitely torture you to death. Looking at the female Blood Clan's ferocious face, Yang Cheng's expression finally sank. The self-recovery ability of these Blood Clan was far beyond his imagination. Even if their internal organs were crushed, they could still recover. What kind of heaven-defying strength was this? Yang Cheng clenched his fists. Next, he could only try to completely smash these guys into pieces and see if they could recover. However, before Yang Cheng could make a move, the sealed barrier behind him was suddenly broken. Ha 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 ha, Manny, you're too careless. How could you provoke such a big shot? A somewhat familiar and charming voice sounded. On the transparent wall of the barrier, a ripple slowly cut open. Following that, a beautiful and graceful figure walked through the ripple into the barrier. Wearing a black British-style coat with a white aristocratic lady's floral collared shirt inside. A seductive lady with a hot figure, fair skin, and a head of dark blonde curls suddenly walked into view of the few people. Lilith! Damn it! Seeing the person who had come, Baroness Manny, whose name was called out, suddenly had a poisonous flame of hatred burning in her eyes. This smiling lady was Lilith, who had crossed paths with Yang Cheng during the fight for the Holy Grail in Zhonghai. Yang Cheng also did not expect to meet this female Blood Clan in Paris, who had a fated kiss with him. But so far, it seemed that Lilith and this Blood Clan called Manny were probably enemies. Moreover, Manny was very unwilling to be found by Lilith. Long time no see, Your Majesty Pluto. Lilith did not pay much attention to Manny's anger. Instead, she smiled charmingly and moved closer to Yang Cheng. That pair of plump, soft flesh seemed to be about to touch Yang Cheng's arm. Although the female vampire in front of him was a feast for the eyes, Yang Cheng knew that this was an old woman over 200 years old. He only smiled faintly and did not make any unnecessary movements. He said, "It hasn't been that long, and now is not the time to reminisce. You're really unromantic. After we parted ways with Hua Xia, I thought about you day and night," Lilith complained angrily. She then looked at Manny, who was panting, and said with a cold expression, "How sad. The last time you changed your body, I couldn't catch up. But this time, I'm very glad that you can't escape Viscount Manny." Manny seemed to be quite afraid of Lilith. Her eyes swept left and right, and it was obvious that she was planning to escape. She laughed sinisterly. "Don't get too carried away. I still have a hostage with me." As she said that, Manny pointed at Guys, who was waiting in a corner. Guys was still holding the unconscious Harry in his arms. The skinny Guys was even more afraid of Lilith. His leg had already turned to jelly, and he was barely holding on to Harry, who was a hostage for the sake of survival. Lilith looked at Yang Cheng with a slightly puzzled expression. "Your Majesty Pluto, is that child the person you want to save?" Yang Cheng scratched his head and said, "Since you want to fight with your enemy, I'll bring the child back first." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Cheng had already disappeared from his original position. When he reappeared, he was already standing in front of Guys in the corner. Guys did not see how Yang Cheng did it at all. He just watched as Yang Cheng snatched Harry from his hands. "Thank you for holding him." Yang Cheng smiled evilly and did not forget to kick Guys away. At the side, Manny's eyes were filled with fear. Only now did she realize that she had underestimated this mysterious Easter man. His speed had already surpassed her imagination. It turned out that she had never had a hostage in the first place. Yang Cheng carried Harry back to where Lin Ruoshi and the others were lying. He clapped his hands and said to Lilith, "Now that there's nothing to worry about, you can make your move. It's quite strenuous for me to fight, and I want to see how you do it. I won't let you down." Lilith gave him a coquettish look. At the same time, she stretched her hand behind her, and in a knife-drawing posture, she strangely took out the moonlight-like machete from the void. Yang Cheng remembered that this was one of the 13 magic weapons of the Blood Clan, the Butcher's Knife. Previously, in the battle in the deep forest of Zhonghai, Lilith had used this sharp weapon that had been stained with blood countless times to kill everyone present. In the end, if he had not made a move, she would have almost cut Kai Ning in half. The surging smell of darkness and blood instantly filled the surroundings. The Butcher's Knife flashed with a soul-stirring light, causing Manny and the others to tense up almost at the same time. Seeing Lilith approaching her with the Butcher's Knife in her hand, Manny retreated and shouted, "Stop her! Hurry up!" Even though the two Black Blood slaves knew that they were no match for Lilith, the absolute class rule of the Blood Clan made them pounce on Lilith without hesitation. Lilith did not even turn her head. She waved the Butcher's Knife behind her, and a blood-colored flame, mixed with black, suddenly sprayed out in the air like the spray of a tide. After drowning the two Black Blood slaves, they instantly burned them. This time, the two Black Blood slaves only let out 2 low growls before turning into dust and disappearing into the air. Yang Cheng was stunned. If he remembered correctly, this move was an extremely high-end blood flame among the blood spells. This kind of flame was cold and had no temperature, but it could disintegrate any living body cells it touched. It was extremely terrifying. Previously, Lilith had used the extremely high-end blood spell Blood Clone to deceive Kai Ning. Now, she had used another ultimate move. The strength of a pure-blood Blood Clan was indeed extraordinary. Looking at the Black Blood slaves that could recover no matter how he hit them, it seemed that he had to burn them. No wonder it was useless no matter how he smashed them. On the other side, Manny watched as her servants were burned just like that. She became more and more panicked and wanted to escape as soon as possible. Just as she turned around, she saw that Yang Cheng, who was still behind her, had appeared in front of her again. Yang Cheng grinned bashfully. "So you'll only die if I burn you. I also have a fire, so I'll use you as a test subject." After saying that, Yang Cheng's right hand was already in front of Manny's eyes, and a ball of green flame suddenly bloomed. Manny didn't even have the time to react. She could only feel the cyan flames jumping around like flowing water. However, this seemingly soft flame, which didn't even have any heat, was causing her body to gradually melt, starting from the head closest to the flames. When Manny came back to her senses, the flame in front of her had already expanded and engulfed her entire body. Before she could even let out a scream, Manny's body was completely vaporized in a ball of green flames. So it really works. Yang Chung looked at his right hand. Just now, he thought of using innate true chi to simulate the form of the flame, which could be called true fire. He didn't expect it to really work. Not far away, Lilith's butcher knife gently swung down, and Guys, who was already so scared that his legs turned to jelly, was also taken away from this world by the blood flame. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding enchantment was also broken, and everything returned to normal. The butcher knife in Lilith's hand disappeared in the blink of an eye. Smiling, she walked in front of Yang Chung and asked curiously, "Your Majesty Pluto, what kind of spell was that green flame you used just now?" As creatures that had lived for more than 200 years, the vampires were very curious about the unknown because there were very few things that they didn't know. Yang Chung smiled and didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to little Harry's side, squatted down, and carefully examined Harry's unconscious state. While examining, he replied, "That was a type of internal energy that I cultivated, and it produced true chi. According to Huaxia's martial arts, it's a kind of innate energy. That energy itself contains various elements, and I just transformed it into a form of flame." Lilith nodded, not really understanding. Seeing that Yang Chung was examining little Harry, she curled her lips and said, "There's no need to examine. This child must have fainted because Manny sucked too much of his blood." Sure enough, Yang Chung saw the tiny teeth marks on Harry's neck. Frowning, he transferred a trace of true chi near the wound, and the wound quickly healed. If others saw this kind of wound, it would be too easy to think of vampires. Seeing that Lin Ruoshi, Stern, and the others were still lying down, Yang Chung knew that they were just unconscious and would be fine. So, he looked at Lilith and asked, "Those people just now were vampires, right? What did you vampires become so powerful that you can only rely on blood flame-level blood spells to kill them?" Lilith's smile disappeared, and she said with a rare serious expression, "Your Majesty Pluto, please don't confuse me with this group of ugly creatures. That woman, Manny, is a member of one of the two main clans of Savath, the ugliest Simish clan." Simish clan? Yang Chung vaguely had some impression of this clan, but he didn't know much about it. Yes, that Simish clan has been the most brutal, faithless, and moral shame of the vampires since ancient times. If there's anything they have going for them, it's that they have a stronger desire to learn and the ability to explore scientific knowledge than any other clan. However, they covet eternal life more than any other clan, Lilith said. Eternal life? Eternal life again? What's the difference between the long life of you vampires and eternal life? Yang Chung was puzzled. Lilith shook her head. It's not the same. The eternal life that the Simish clan pursues is not only a long life, but also to not be killed by the enemy, and to be able to retain their youth forever. Yang Chung was speechless. Even the 12 main gods couldn't keep their bodies young forever. Actually, the scientific research of the Simish clan is still admirable. At the end of the last century, the Simish clan had conducted various experiments on vampires and humans through physiological dissection, becoming the only clan among the vampires that could prevent the heart from becoming a fatal wound. Lilith explained that Simish clan also has an innate ability that other clans don't have. They can reorganize the scattered cell tissues and reshape the body. It was also through this method that the Simish clan could shatter the bodies of humans or other vampires, and then mold the other party's body tissues into their own bodies. This is also what they call body reconstruction. Yang Chung curled his lips. No wonder when we first met, that woman said that she found a good body. So, she wanted to kill my woman and then become her appearance. What a repulsive ability. Yes, that's why the Simish clan has always been one of the two major clans of Savath, because they know that even if they want to join our Camarilla, we won't allow it. Lilith nodded, then sighed. All these years, although our Camarilla has always occupied the world of vampires, including the dominion of the Dark Parliament, the growth of the Tsimish clan and the other clans of Savith is obvious. Just the continuous growth of the Tsimish clan members has made many of our clans who can't use high-end blood spells unable to compete with them. So in the past few years, I've been hunting down some important figures of the Tsimish clan everywhere, trying to prevent them from being too rampant. Yang Chung understood that this was also considered an internal worry of the Dark Parliament. At this time, listening to Lilith talk about these things, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "Lilith, you said that Manny is from the Tsimish clan. Then, which clan of Camarilla are you from?" Lilith wrinkled her nose and snorted. "You're only asking about my background now. Your Majesty Pluto is really a slow person." Yang Chung rolled his eyes. He wasn't a paparazzi. Why did he have to ask about everything? "I'm from the Vanjua clan. My father is the current clan leader of the Vanjua clan, Prince Ardras," Lilith said proudly. Yang Chung revealed a look of realization. "No wonder you can get a magic weapon like the butcher's knife. I was thinking, even if you're a pure-blooded vampires, and your parents are demigods like third-generation vampires, it's still impossible for you to get a magic weapon at the age of 200. If I remember correctly, the Vanjua clan should be the clan with the highest status in Camarilla, with the largest number of nobles." TSK. I couldn't tell that Lilith is from a rich family. If this was in the human world, she could at least find a second-generation rich man to marry and become a rich lady. Find a second-generation rich man? Lilith almost couldn't believe her ears. Was this man trying to anger her to death? She thought that after revealing her background, he would at least say something nice, but he actually put her in the same category as those vulgar ladies from rich families. Even if she was a royal princess, how could she compare to her? Yang Chung saw that Lilith's pretty face was about to emit smoke, and he smiled sheepishly and waved his hand. "I was just joking. Don't take it too seriously. I know you're very generous, Lilith. Logically speaking, it's rare for us to meet, so I should treat you to a drink, but you see, I have a lot of things to do now. I have to take this child to the hospital, and I might even have to find his parents or something. There's a lot of things to do. I think you should leave first, Lilith." Lilith wanted to rush up and duel with Yang Chung. He didn't say anything nice, and he sent her away just like that. "Your Majesty Pluto, I have to say, in addition to your strength, you're really a mess of a man." Lilith said this sentence, almost cursing, and planned to leave. She was in a terrible mood. However, before Lilith could take a step, Yang Chung shouted from behind, "Wait, Lilith, I have something to ask you." The corner of Lilith's mouth showed a little devilish smile. "Look, this man still knows how good I am. He's so quick to find a reason to stop me from leaving." Pretending as if nothing had happened, Lilith turned around and asked, "Your Majesty Pluto, do you have any other questions?" Yang Chung touched his chin, hesitated for a moment, and felt that it was better to ask. "In fact, it's not a big deal. It's just that I'm still not familiar with many places in Paris. You're also so old, and after so many years in Europe, you must be familiar with everywhere. I just want to ask you, which hospital near here is cheaper?" What? Lilith suspected that she had heard wrong. I'm going to send this child to the hospital. Anyway, it's not a serious illness. He could just rest for a while. When his family comes, if they're not from a rich family, I'll send him to a hospital that's too expensive, and in the end, it won't matter who pays for it. So, I want to ask, which hospital is the cheapest?" Yang Chung asked expectantly. Lilith's white face was about to turn black. She resisted the urge to pull out the butcher's knife and go up to fight. She stomped her feet fiercely, directly breaking 2 cement slabs, and in a flash, she left the scene angrily. Yang Chung looked at Lilith's figure leaving in a dilemma, muttering to himself, "If you don't know, just say it. Why are you angry? Could it be that the Blood Clan also have menopause?" Chapter 5:23. An hour later, in a hospital ward in the center of Paris, Yang Chung and Lin Ruoshi stood by the bed where Harry was lying. At this moment, Harry's mother rushed over after receiving the notification. After the doctor's examination, the cause of Harry's coma was determined to be anemia. In fact, the doctor couldn't give any other diagnosis. Harry had already woken up at this time. Seeing his mother by the bed with tears in her eyes, he whispered, "Mom, don't cry. Dad hates crying kids the most. If Mom cries, Dad won't like Mom." "Okay, Mom won't cry." The woman wiped the corner of her eyes and showed a smile. She turned her head and looked at Yang Chung and Lin Ruoshi. "I really want to thank the both of you. Our Harry has always been fine. I really don't know why he suddenly became like this." Yang Chung said, "It's not a big problem. The doctor said there won't be any sequelae. Children always have some unexpected situations when they are young. Just pay attention to your health in the future." Lin Ruoshi secretly glanced at Yang Chung. Of course, she wouldn't believe that Harry really had a sudden anemia. She just roughly understood the reason why Yang Chung hid it. However, seeing that Yang Chung lied without batting an eyelid, her heart was a little complicated. The woman thought of something and said to Harry, "Harry, thank Uncle and Auntie. They saved you." Harry didn't remember anything. In his mind, he fainted on the street, so he wasn't afraid. He said obediently, "Thank you, Uncle. Thank you, Sister." Harry's voice was still a little soft. After all, his body hadn't recovered. However, Yang Chung heard it and his teeth itched. "Damn it, didn't your mom tell you to call Uncle and Auntie? Why did you change it to Sister?" Lin Ruoshi's eyes were slightly red. She pitifully stepped forward and touched Harry's baby fat cheeks. "Harry is so good." "Miss Lin, Mr. Yang, Harry's father is very busy with work and rarely comes home. I should have called him to thank you, but I can't contact him now. Why don't the two of you stay for a while? It's almost dinner time, and I'll treat you to a nearby French restaurant," the woman said earnestly. "I don't think it's necessary, since the doctor said that Harry has to stay in the hospital for a day of observation. You should stay here and take care of him. We still have 2 friends waiting outside, so it's not very convenient," Lin Ruoshi said. The woman was troubled for a while and finally apologized. "If that's the case, I can only say thank you again." Lin Ruoshi pursed her lips and smiled, indicating that it was nothing. Suddenly, she thought of something. She grabbed her bag and took out the blue-purple flowers she bought from Harry. The flowers were a little wilted because they had been placed for a long time, but it didn't affect their appearance too much. "I'll keep these flowers here and give them back to Harry so that he can get better soon." Lin Ruoshi placed the flowers beside Harry's bed. Harry blinked and said, "But I've already sold these flowers to you. How can I take them back? Since they're already mine, you can give them to Harry if you want, right?" Lin Ruoshi said. At this moment, the woman heard the word sold and asked curiously, "Miss Lin, from what you said, did Harry sell these iris flowers to you?" Lin Ruoshi was stunned. She didn't know the word iris flower, so she looked at Yang Chung inquiringly. "This is actually the national flower of France, iris flower." Yang Chung translated it in Mandarin. Lin Ruoshi heard the name and silently repeated it a few times. She smiled and said, "Harry happened to sell them to me when he was selling flowers to buy a new pair of socks for his father. Harry might have hidden it from you on purpose, but it's not to do anything bad. I hope you don't mind." The woman sighed emotionally. "His father is rarely at home. He can only see him once a week when he's busy. I can't take care of the child all the time. It's our fault. Of course, we won't blame Harry." After chatting for a while, Harry unknowingly fell asleep on the bed. A lot of blood had been taken from his little body, so it wouldn't recover so quickly. Although Lin Ruoshi was a little reluctant, she knew that she couldn't stay any longer. Thus, she said goodbye to the woman and told her that she would visit Harry again tomorrow. Then, she left the ward with Yang Chung. Walking along the corridor of the hospital, Lin Ruoshi whispered, "Iris flower? Iris flower, I didn't know those flowers had such a beautiful name." Yang Chung said mysteriously, "Wife, do you know what iris flower represents? Why are you keeping me in suspense?" Lin Ruoshi rolled her eyes at him unhappily. "If you want to say it, then say it. If you don't want to say it, then forget it. Can't I find it out myself?" Yang Chung said disappointedly, "You really don't have any mood." "Yes, I don't have any mood. You can play with other women. I've developed a bad temper since I was young. I can't change it in this lifetime," Lin Ruoshi said coldly. Yang Cheng was helpless. Was this woman acting like a tsundere, or was it her period? He never would have thought that Lin Ruoshi was still bothered by Yang Cheng's lying skills. Seeing that Yang Cheng didn't even blink when he lied, Lin Ruoshi had a feeling that this guy was lying to her. Naturally, she wasn't in the mood. Iris dectorum. This is the Latin name of the iris flower. It means rainbow, and the iris flower has a lot of colors. In French, it also means flower of light. So those few flowers that I gave Harry were quite suitable. Yang Cheng said it himself. Lin Ruoshi said doubtfully. Then why didn't you tell me when I bought the flowers at noon? Yang Cheng curled his lips. That brat called you sister and called me uncle. How could I be in the mood to talk about flowers? Lin Ruoshi suddenly realized that there was still this difference. So this guy actually cared about how he was addressed? She couldn't help but burst into laughter. Her mood finally improved a lot. All right, you said in the ward just now that you're coming to see Harry tomorrow. Don't tell me, darling Ruoshi, you're not going to watch the press conference? Yang Cheng asked curiously. Lin Ruoshi still felt uncomfortable when she heard Yang Cheng call her by that mushy name. Fortunately, this guy only called her that in private, otherwise she really wanted to strangle him to death. I'll take the time to see Harry in the afternoon. I'm not too interested in the brands tomorrow afternoon. Lin Ruoshi explained. Yang Cheng nodded, rubbed his chin, and said, I want to tell you something in advance. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to a place alone to deal with some problems. This morning, my old friend came to find me for that matter. It might not end until very late tomorrow, or even the morning after tomorrow. I'm telling you in advance so that you won't worry about me. After hearing this, Lin Ruoshi thought of Sauron, who had appeared in the morning. She really wanted to ask Yang Cheng if that matter was very dangerous, but when the words came to her mouth, she only said indifferently, Who would worry about you? Do whatever you like. I'm more at ease without you here. Yang Cheng smiled bitterly. He knew this would be the result. It's good that you're not worried. I didn't mean anything else. Lin Ruoshi was actually a little regretful, but she had already said it and couldn't take it back. She could only maintain an indifferent expression and walk out of the hospital with Yang Cheng. Not long after they walked out of the door, a trace of doubt flashed across Yang Cheng's eyes. He stopped and turned around to look at the empty hospital entrance. What's wrong? Seeing that Yang Cheng didn't follow, Lin Ruoshi turned around and asked. Yang Cheng turned back and said with a smile, Nothing. I'm just thinking if you should buy some gifts for Harry tomorrow. It must be fate that such a thing has happened in France. Lin Ruoshi's eyes lit up. You're smart this time. I'll buy some fun things for Harry tomorrow. Yang Cheng smiled and nodded. Then, the two walked back to where the Maybach was parked. However, just when they reached the car, Yang Cheng immediately stopped Lin Ruoshi from opening the door. What's wrong? Lin Ruoshi looked at Yang Cheng, puzzled. Yang Cheng had a strange smile on his face. He reached out and patted the back window. After about 2 minutes, the back door was opened from the inside. A lewd smell wafted out from the car. The smell of hormones instantly assaulted their nostrils. Lin Ruoshi widened her pair of watery eyes, and her pretty face instantly turned into a cherry color. She saw Stern and Alice, the brother and sister pair, hugging each other in disheveled clothes. Their hair was messy, and their foreheads were covered in sweat. Stern was wearing a white shirt, but the buttons on the chest were crooked. His face was full of lip marks and bite marks. His pants were unzipped. Alice was in an even worse state. A large area of her snow-white skin was exposed, and there was even some sticky substance that would cause one to feel embarrassed. Beneath her skirt, her stockings had been removed and casually tossed onto the seat. At the same time, what was tossed there was a pair of women's lingerie. Alice, whose beautiful eyes were like peach blossoms, flipped her silver hair. Her face was red. It was unknown whether it was because of shyness or the remnants of the intense exercise. She giggled and said, Sorry to keep you waiting. You two can come in now. If Lin Ruoshi still didn't know what happened in the car after seeing such a scene, then she wasn't simple. She was pure idiot. Let me tell you, I don't have any objections if you want to do it in the car, but remember to remove all your traces. Otherwise, when the car is returned, people will think that it was left by me and my wife. It's too smelly. It's not my style. My wife's smell is purer, Yang Cheng said very seriously. Lin Ruoshi immediately hit Yang Cheng's back. Stop talking. Aren't you ashamed? She really had to give it to these people. First, it was their biological brother and sister doing that kind of thing in the car. Although they knew that they were talking nonsense, they didn't have to be so restrained, right? This scoundrel Yang Cheng was even worse. He could still confidently let others clean up the mess and say such shameful things. When she got back into the car, Lin Ruoshi was still blushing and her heart was beating fast. She saw the Stern siblings start kissing again in the rearview mirror. She was about to break down. What kind of people are they? They were almost killed by those monsters in the afternoon. Although she didn't know what happened, Yang Cheng saved everyone. But this pair of siblings were too careless. They didn't ask much and just wanted to sneak back into the car to do that kind of thing. Lin Ruoshi thought that even if she didn't ask who the people in the afternoon were because of her personality, the Stern siblings would still ask. But at this moment, she realized that she couldn't use normal logic to think about the three weirdos in the car other than herself. Chapter 5:24. Le Havre, a port city in the northwest of France, was also an outlet city for the Seine River. After the reconstruction of the ancient city, this ancient port city had become one of the world's cultural heritages. The people living here had a strong sense of pride. They owned the oldest football club in France. Although this team had only won the French League Championship once in its history, it didn't affect the fact that it was the oldest. The city's container transportation was the best in France. In the whole of France, Le Havre was a super export city, playing an extraordinary role in the economy. Every day by the port was busy. There was nothing special about it. The people here were almost used to the whistles of various ships and the strange languages of tourists from all over the world. Many people would easily lose sleep at night if they couldn't hear the ear-piercing whistles. But today, since the morning, the port was unusually quiet. It was so quiet that not a single person could be seen. The curious people nearby wanted to take a look inside the port. However, when they were about to enter the edge of the port, they were immediately stopped by the French soldiers with live ammunition. The port had been sealed. Many people guessed that there might be a terrorist attack or something like a bomb. Or maybe the army was secretly putting on a show and transporting some secret weapons. In the seawater by the port, the only magnificent super cruise ship, Louis XVI, was docked peacefully. At the entrance of the ship, Fodessa, who was dressed in military uniform, was standing straight with Bolton and a few of his assistants. Fodessa didn't look relaxed at all. He looked at the special watch on his wrist. It was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but the number of people boarding the ship was only half of the participants. Fodessa didn't feel confident. After all, these people weren't ordinary people. Promises, etiquette, and morality were already a joke in most people's eyes. What kind of people have arrived? Fodessa asked one of his assistants who was in charge of taking notes. The deputy immediately turned on the tablet in his hand and replied, "Reporting, Deputy Director, the internationally renowned large-scale organizations have arrived. Russia's Soviet Medal, America's Blue Storm, South America's Jaguar, Israel's Mossad, the newly formed assassin organization Zero, Mediterranean Sea Eagles, Japan's Yamada Sect, and Hwasia's Yellow Flame Iron Brigade. However, Yamada Sect and Yellow Flame Iron Brigade only sent one person each. One of them was an upper-level ninja, Takahashi Kukin, and the other was Abbas Yun Miao of Yellow Flame Iron Brigade. There are still quite a few other national security organizations, but they are not very strong. The rest are scattered, smaller organizations. Brahma from India and Sandstorm from the Middle East have given up on this secret meeting. The reason is unknown." Fodessa fell into silence after listening to him. "Deputy Director, don't worry. The rest will definitely come. It's still early before the ship departs. Many of them hate each other. If they board the ship too early, it will only cause unnecessary conflicts." Bolton, who was at the back, saw his superior's worry and reminded him. Fodessa nodded and patted on his confidant's shoulder. "Thank you for your hard work these days. Once this meeting is over and we've found a way to deal with the realm of God, Everyone can rest for a while. When the time comes, it won't be our turn." Bolton grinned and said, "Deputy Director, your words are a huge blow to our confidence." A helpless smile appeared on Fodessa's straight face. He also hoped that the French Security Bureau would have the ability to fight against that detestable Apollo. However, reality was cruel. They indeed didn't have the ability to participate. At this moment, a few dark clouds suddenly floated over from the sky. As the clouds gathered, a light drizzle fell from the sky, then simply turned into raindrops. "Why is it raining all of a sudden?" someone asked in surprise as he touched the water stains on his face. Fodessa also felt that the rain was too strange. It was sunny just a moment ago. Why did it suddenly rain? "Deputy Director, someone else is coming." One of his subordinates reminded Fodessa. Fodessa turned around and saw a few silhouettes in different clothes walking towards the boarding gate. Among them, one was a long-haired, seductive woman in a red kimono. Her jet-black hair hung straight down her knees. She was tall and slender, with eyebrows like willow leaves. She was full of the charm of an Eastern woman. Another one was a hunchbacked figure in a black robe. His entire body was shrouded in a black robe, and there seemed to be a black fog lingering around him, making him look mysterious. The last one was a girl in a blue kimono. She looked like a 13 or 14-year-old girl. However, the doll-like girl was sobbing beside the long-haired woman with tears in her eyes. The last man was a man in a brown samurai suit with a short blade at his waist. He looked rather delicate, fair, and had a smile on his face. He looked the most normal. "Excuse me, you are?" Fodessa knew that those who could enter this place were invited, but he wasn't sure where they came from. The seductive, long-haired woman said in a sweet voice, "We're from Takamagara. This is our first meeting. I'm Makuka. Pleased to meet you." One of the scribes behind Fodessa reminded, "Deputy Director, Takamagara is the strongest special human organization in Japan. They have just unified recently, so our invitation was successfully sent over. Before this, Takamagara has always been a scattered organization without a leader." Fodessa nodded and smiled at Makuka. "So, it seems like Miss Makuka is the leader of Takamagara's delegation this time?" Makuka giggled seductively. "Unfortunately, you're wrong, sir. Our general is coming personally this time." "General?" Fodessa was unfamiliar with the way of addressing people in Japan, but he knew that it meant boss. He asked, "Excuse me, who is the general?" The handsome man who had been smiling silently pointed at the door of the cruise. "The general is already there." Fodessa and the rest turned around and suddenly saw a man in blue and black martial attire, with white hair combed behind his head and a sparse beard. He was smoking an opium pipe in his mouth, puffing out clouds of smoke as he waited for them to board the ship. Fodessa and the rest were dumbfounded. They didn't even see how this man got on the cruise. Could it be that this man could turn invisible? "That is our general, Narera Hyon. I'm sorry, but our general is a little eccentric. Please don't mind him too much." Makuka smiled and bowed. Fodessa quickly waved his hand. "Everyone here is a guest with great skills. We can understand. Please get on the cruise and have a rest. Someone will make arrangements for you." After Makuka and the rest thanked him, they started to board the cruise. However, after a few steps, they seemed to have thought of something. Makuka reached out and pinched the face of the crying girl. She said softly, "Little you be good. If it gets too humid later, everyone will feel uncomfortable. It will be terrible if someone comes out to beat little you." When the girl heard that someone was going to beat her, she immediately pouted and stopped crying. At this moment, Fodessa and the rest suddenly realized that the dark clouds in the sky were dispersing rapidly, and the continuous rain had stopped. Seeing that the people from Takamagara had boarded the cruise, the assistant in charge of recording said, "Deputy Director, if I'm not mistaken, the crying girl just now is the rain girl on the register. According to Japanese legends, she's a demon that can bring rain. The rain just now should be the cause of her crying, but whether she's a demon or a human, we can't be sure. Organizations like Takamagara are rarely recorded." Demon? Fodessa felt like his brain was about to explode. He wanted to bang his head on the wall. Was there such a thing? However, before Fodessa and the rest could react, a few unfamiliar figures slowly walked over from afar. To be precise, one of them wasn't walking but flying. A graceful lady in black tights with light blonde hair danced in the wind. Her feet were about 10 centimeters off the ground. Her body was as smooth as a feather, as if she was floating in space. The lady revealed a cold smile. "You must be Deputy Director Fodessa. We're the delegation sent by England's Sword in the Stone. My name is Lola." Lady Storm Word. The assistant immediately recalled the origin of the name. After all, England and France were separated by the sea. The Sword in the Stone was England's trump card, so the French Security Bureau knew more about it. Lola didn't respond. Instead, she turned her body and introduced the other members behind her. "Our Sword in the Stone is divided into the Merlin Magic Association and the Knights of the Round Table. To show our respect, we've sent 4 mages and 3 knights," Lola said. Fodessa and the rest looked over. Among them, there were 3 well-mannered but tall men. They should be the Knights of the Round Table that Lola mentioned. On the other hand, there was a burly man who was more than 2 meters tall, and a young man who was slightly thin but had a gaze as sharp as a knife. He was dressed in a neat suit jacket. The burly man greeted everyone in a simple and honest manner. The arrogant young man couldn't be bothered with Fodessa and the rest. Lady Lola, you mentioned that there are 7 of you, but why?" Fodessa was puzzled. Weren't there only 6 of them? Lola was stunned for a moment before she smiled and pointed at a petite figure who was rushing over from afar. "That's Emma. She's also a member of our mage guild. That child is still in a daze. She must have lost her again." The girl who was riding Emma was about 15 or 16 years old. She had freckles on her face, and her chestnut hair was tied into a ponytail. She looked fresh and cute. She was panting and shyly greeting Fodessa and the rest. "Hello, everyone. I'm Emma. I'm 15 years old this year. I'm Little Prince's fiancée." Emma's face was burning as she said the last part. Fodessa and the rest froze. This girl was too simple. It was already amazing enough for her to introduce her age in such an occasion. Why did she say she was someone's fiancée? This was too cute. Compared to that incomparably callous youth, Emma was really much more likable. But who was Prince? Just as Fodessa was about to say a few polite words, the young man who had been silent shot a cold glance at Emma, who was lowering her head shyly. "Woman, how many times have I told you that I won't marry you? Don't tell anyone that you're my fiancé." Everyone suddenly realized that this cool young man was the little prince that Emma had been talking about. No matter how they looked at it, it looked like a marriage between 2 babies. Emma raised her head, feeling wronged. Tears began to well up in her eyes. "Little Prin, our engagement was set by our grandfathers. It can't be changed. Emma can only marry Prince for the rest of her life. Are you a pig brain? What does the marriage of those old antiques have to do with me?" Prince said coldly with a stern expression. "Enough!" Storm Lola shouted. "Prince, don't bully Emma. She didn't lie. It's a fact that you guys have an engagement. If you're not satisfied, go find your family elders." Prince seemed to have a certain level of respect for Lola. He snorted coldly and was too lazy to speak. Emma pulled Lola's arm pitifully and whispered, "Don't talk about Little Prince. It's Emma's fault. I said too much." Lola sighed and patted Emma's head. She smiled at Fodessa and the rest embarrassedly. "I'm sorry. They're still kids." Fodessa felt like banging his head against the wall again. One of the strongest Esper organizations in the world, the Sword in the Stone, had such a bunch of idiots in it. At this moment, the cool young man, Prince, who had been silent, frowned. He raised his head and looked to his right. Baring his teeth, Prince said fiercely, "It's you? You devil. I've waited for you for so many years. You finally appeared. Devil?" Everyone was puzzled. They followed Prince's gaze and saw a figure walking towards them from afar. Chapter 525. It was exactly noon outside the Louvre, the famous museum on the north bank of the Seine in Paris. After watching the fashion show in the morning from the Carousel Hall, Lynn Rouachi strolled past the famous glass pyramid with her bag. She wore a black short-shoulder pleated skirt and black crystal high heels. Her fine black hair swayed gently in the wind. The simple cut and simple matching took away the attention of the surrounding passersby. This ostentatious city was never lacking in colorful costumes and avant-garde concepts. However, it was also because of this that people's aesthetic standards were particularly picky. But without a doubt, Lin Ruoshi still broke the barrier between Eastern and Western aesthetics. Even if she didn't intentionally dress up too flashily, it was as if some people were destined to stand out. If it wasn't for those with discerning eyes, they could see that Lin Ruoshi's seemingly simple clothes were, in fact, luxurious spring items that cost no less than 20,000 euros. Those who could wear were either rich or respectable. Perhaps many talent scouts or photographers would have come forward to strike up a conversation. Just then, a handsome white man and beautiful woman stood up from the side of the pool and greeted Lin Ruoshi. "Hi, Miss Lin, you're finally out. We've been waiting for so long." The blonde, handsome man who greeted her was naturally stern. Lin Ruoshi was recalling the fashion she had just seen and carefully screening the brands and suppliers to contact for the new year. She was slightly shocked to see Stern and Alice suddenly appear. "Mr. Stern, Miss Alice, were you waiting for me here?" Lin Ruoshi was a little puzzled. When she came out this morning, Yang Chung didn't come with her because he had his own things to do. As for the Stern siblings, they separated after returning to the hotel last night and didn't see each other in the morning. She originally thought that the clown siblings of the Cromwell family had finally gone somewhere else to play. She didn't expect to suddenly appear in front of her. "Actually, we saw Miss Lin in the hall just now, but we felt the air was too stuffy, so we came out early. We've been waiting for Miss Lin for almost an hour," Alice said with some pain. Lin Ruoshi had a bad feeling and said calmly, "I don't know what you two are waiting for me for. Is there anything?" Stern smiled and asked, "Miss Lin, is Mr. Yang not here?" "And he seems to have gone to meet his friends in Europe. He might only be back tomorrow," Lin Ruoshi said truthfully. "Oh," Stern said. "Then where's Miss Lin going now?" Lin Ruoshi looked at the expectant faces of the siblings and became even more curious. She said, "I plan to eat something and then go to little Harry's place to see him. I'll buy some gifts on the way." After all, to be able to meet in Paris and have something like this happen, it can be considered fate. "Great!" Stern suddenly let out a loud cry and said with a moved expression, "Miss Lin is really the reincarnation of the Virgin Mary. It really moves us. We also want to visit little Harry like Miss Lin. Why don't we have dinner together and then go to the hospital together?" "Go eat together?" Lin Ruoshi understood. It seemed that the siblings wanted to get a free meal and a free ride again. Although she didn't know why they kept pestering her, she couldn't very well reject them. "Forget it. It's just for a few days. Let them be." "All right. I'm alone anyway." "It counts as having two companions," Lin Ruoshi agreed. She saw that Stern and Alice had a relaxed look on their faces. Stern said shyly in a low voice, "Miss Lin, you are so kind. Last night, Mr. Yang said that you don't mind treating us for a few more days. I was worried that you wouldn't be willing. It seems that I was overthinking. But don't worry, the key is that we have some problems communicating with our family. When our family understands our real situation, they will immediately return the money to Miss Lin." When Lin Ruoshi heard that, she then realized that it was Yang Chung who said too much, who told him that "I'm willing to treat this pair of siblings for a few days. Money isn't a problem. The key is, can ordinary people stand this pair of siblings? What if they do that kind of thing in my car again?" Now, these two people were really sticking to him. Moreover, with this beginning, how could he suddenly say no midway? Lin Ruoshi's expression didn't change, but she was gnashing her teeth in hatred. "Damn Yang Chung. Stinky Yang Chung. If you want to go out and fool around, just go. Why did you leave these two clowns by my side after you left?" But no matter what, Lin Ruoshi could only chat with Stern and Alice as they walked towards the parking lot. However, Lin Ruoshi didn't notice that there were a few other figures in the crowd who were also following them. At the port of Le Havre, at the entrance of the Louis XVI Super Cruise, Fodessa and the rest, as well as the 7 members of the Sword and the Stone, were looking at the man who was slowly approaching them. The man's face was rather handsome, but he was slovenly, as if he had forgotten to shave in the morning. He was wearing a red and black checkered cotton shirt, loose beige sports pants, and a pair of dirty Nike sneakers. At this moment, a man was walking towards them with a cigarette dangling from his mouth and both hands in his pockets. He looked like a real hooligan. Devil? You mean that person? Fodessa had already recognized the man. Isn't he the Yang Chung who was personally bailed out by the Queen of Wales 2 days ago? This mysterious man was full of questions, but Fodessa was busy with work and didn't have the time to investigate. Until now, he still didn't know what attitude he should take towards Yang Chung. Terrorist? He wasn't afraid, but the Queen of Wales? Even if he wasn't afraid, he had to be afraid. When Yang Chung was about 20 meters away from them, he held the cigarette in one hand and greeted with a grin. Isn't this Deputy Director Fodessa? We meet again. What a coincidence. I was wondering if the people in charge of inspection would stop me. Since it's you, there shouldn't be a problem. Ha! Fodessa's face turned pale. Was he that close to him? Devil, fight me. I'm going to kill you. Suddenly, Prince, who had a sullen expression on his face, let out a loud roar. He took a step forward and opened up his left hand. A crystal ball of light appeared above his palm and floated, emitting a dazzling brilliance. Even in the daytime, the beautiful radiance of the light ball was still mesmerizing. Fodessa and the rest were dazed for a few seconds. They didn't have the time to think about what the ball was and how it appeared so easily. Prince, stop! Storm Lola shouted and pulled down Prince's left hand, causing the light ball to dissipate. Lola, why did you stop me? You obviously know him. Prince yelled. His eyes were even glistening with anger. Lola said coldly, It's because I know who he is that I forbid you from fighting. You're not his match. Yang Chun, who had been watching everything quietly, casually threw the cigarette but into the seawater. He carefully looked at Prince for a while, then looked at Lola and the others. Frowning, he said, What nonsense are you guys talking about? Do I have a grudge against this kid? Why does this kid want to fight me the moment he sees me? TSK, kid, do you know what a duel is? I know. Prince's fair and handsome face revealed a vicious expression, as if he wanted to skin and eat Yang Chung alive. He said loudly, A duel is a battle where lives are at stake. Devil, I'm going to kill you. Yang Chung scratched his head. I don't remember doing anything to you. You're so young. I won't snatch your woman. I don't lack money, so I won't snatch your pocket money. Why do you hate me so much? Prince was furious. He hissed, Devil, don't you dare run away. You definitely know who I am. Don't you dare run away. Emma, who had been looking at Prince worriedly, stepped forward and held his shoulder. She advised weakly, Little Prince, don't be like this. You're so scary. Mind your own business. Woman, get lost. Prince waved his hand and pushed Emma away. Emma could only look at Prince pitifully after being pushed away, but she didn't dare to say anything. Lola, on the other hand, patted Emma's head sympathetically to comfort her. Fodessa and the rest broke out in cold sweat when they saw Prince, who had been cold just a moment ago, suddenly turn into such a crazy person. If it wasn't for Lady Storm's words stopping them, they would have really started fighting. Speaking of which, what was the relationship between this cool guy and the ruffian Yang Chung? Yang Chung curled his lips and rolled his eyes. How would I know what I did if you don't tell me? I don't even remember the last time I took a dump. Pluto, you don't know Prince, but you definitely know his father, inner demon, Les Winter. Lola's eyes were filled with hatred as she said each word slowly. However, it was easy to see that she was suppressing her anger. Yang Chung was stunned. He stared at the 7 of them more carefully. After thinking for a while, he laughed at himself and slapped his forehead. I'm really sorry. I've been living a comfortable life for too long. I almost didn't recognize you guys. You're actually from the Sword and the Stone. I've had many dealings with you guys over the years. However, because I've met too many people, I can't remember. Yang Chung paused and smiled. Les Winter, I remember that man quite clearly. After all, he was the man who almost killed me. But I still killed him in the end. Haha, it's a duel. Someone has to die. Yang Chung then looked at the aggressive Prince and clicked his tongue as he sighed. I was wondering why that move of yours felt so familiar. It seems like your father is a soul mage, and your son is a soul mage too. Huh? Not bad, not bad. Judging from your magic, you don't seem to be any weaker than your father. I've already surpassed my father. I can definitely kill you, you demon. I'll avenge my father, Prince said in a deep voice. At this time, the burly man from the sword and the stone, Wood, stood up and said to Yang Cheng in a loud voice, Your Majesty Pluto, do you still remember me? Yang Cheng looked up and thought carefully. He asked suspiciously, You're the stone man from back then? You didn't die? Wood grinned. Back then, I watched as Your Majesty Pluto single-handedly massacred the elites of our Sword and the Stone Guild, including 11 special ability users. Perhaps it was God's blessing, but I managed to survive despite being seriously injured. At that time, Prince had just entered the Merlin Magic Association as an apprentice. He only saw the first few scenes of the battle before he was dragged away by our people. However, he still remembered your appearance. It was you who killed his father in front of him. Yang Cheng fell silent. He could not help but recall the days of bloodshed in England. After agreeing to Catherine's request, he almost single-handedly turned the English royal family upside down. After killing all the main members of the royal family who wanted to kill Catherine and her daughter, the Queen of England finally could not sit still and let the Sword and the Stone make an exception to participate in the battle for the position of the royal family. In the Sword and the Stone, the leader of the elite team from the Merlin Magic Association was the Mind Mage, known as the Heart Demon, Les Winter. Les Winter's mastery of mind magic was extremely high. He summoned the negative emotions in Yang Cheng's body, causing intense pain in his soul. Thus, his body was also stimulated in an unconventional way. His brain was unable to control it, and it produced all kinds of unbearable pain. Yang Cheng already had an extremely dark side to him. After being stimulated by the mind magic, he almost fell into an abyss in an instant. However, a true powerhouse would always be able to fight back in a desperate situation. With the last bit of clarity, Yang Cheng forcefully activated the Endless Resolve Restoration scripture to stabilize his mind and get rid of all distracting thoughts. He seized the opportunity and killed Les Winter, who did not have the ability to fight back on the spot. That was the battle that Yang Cheng was the closest to death. However, it had been 7 or 8 years, so Yang Cheng did not immediately remember it. The scene was a little cold. The 7 members of the Sword and the Stone were filled with hatred for Yang Cheng, but they did not dare to make a move. Yang Cheng, on the other hand, was immersed in his thoughts of the past, which made him feel a lot of emotions. The ones who were the most shocked and unable to calm down were Fodessa and the others. Although they did not know what the title Pluto represented, this man had actually slaughtered the elite team of the Sword and the Stone alone. In that case, the mysterious person who helped the Queen of Wales regain her throne and established the true hegemony of the British royal family was this unattractive man called Huaxia. If that was the case, then the reason why the Queen of Wales was willing to come to the police station to bail him out would make sense. Fodessa thought to himself, cold sweat dripping down his back. If this man was really angered, wouldn't the French security service be overturned? After a while, Yang Cheng chuckled and raised his head. Now that you mention it, I remember. Do as you please. I've killed so many of your men, so it's understandable that you hate me. However, it doesn't mean that I'll let you kill me. Come and take revenge if you can. I've been meditating recently, so I probably won't kill you for no reason. But now I have to get on the boat. Seeing that Yang Cheng was about to get on the boat, Fodessa was shocked and asked, Mr. Yang, may I ask if you're one of the participants this time? Yang Cheng smiled awkwardly. Although I wasn't invited, it didn't say that I had to be invited. Look, I've already come all the way here. You don't want me to run back to Paris. I've driven for almost 3 hours and searched for quite a while before I found this place. We have guards at every entrance. Without a permit, you can't enter. Mr. Yang, did you? Fodessa felt suffocated and annoyed, but he did not dare to lash out at this man. Yang Cheng quickly waved his hand. Absolutely not. He just fainted. Fodessa's face twitched. He didn't know what to do. It seemed extremely dangerous for this man to stop him. But if he were to go up, Would it disrupt the secret meeting's plan? Deputy Director Fodessa, let this man go up. Don't force him to go up by force. That would only be humiliating yourself. A refined baritone voice suddenly came from behind them. Yang Chung wasn't surprised. He turned his head and saw two figures walking towards him. He grinned and even waved at one of them. The man who walked over was wearing a black gentleman's overcoat with exquisite golden buttons. He was about 9 meters tall and had combed light blonde hair. The man was handsome and calm. His eyebrows were like swords, and his skin was as white as a woman's. No matter how one looked at him, he was a handsome, mature man. Beside the man was a sexy lady who was pouting as if she was mad at someone. She looked similar to the man, and it was easy to tell that she was the man's daughter and not his partner. "You're Prince Sargeras?" Storm Lola looked carefully and finally recognized who it was. Her eyes were filled with nervousness. The appearance of Prince Sargeras made even the 3 knights of the Round Table, who had been silent all this while, tense up. "Don't look at me like that. I'm the same as everyone else. I brought my daughter, Lilith, to this secret meeting. An old man living in seclusion like me doesn't deserve such a grand treatment." Sargeras said amiably, "Father, why are you talking to them? They're a bunch of cowards. They're only afraid of your name. They haven't even seen you in action, and they're already so scared." Lilith snorted and locked her gaze on Yang Chung. She pouted and said, "Your Majesty Pluto, how unfortunate. We meet again." Chapter 526. Yang Chung had long sensed that Lilith was approaching the cruise, but he didn't notice that there was actually an unfathomable Prince Sargeras coming with Lilith. If Lilith, a pure-blood vampire who was more than 200 years old, was already considered a powerful elder of the vampire race, then this father of hers, the man who looked to be only as old as her brother, Prince Sargeras, should have terrifying strength that exceeded Yang Cheng's imagination. Between the main gods, if they wanted to hide each other's aura, it would be completely undetectable. However, it didn't mean that those who were weaker than the main gods couldn't hide it. In fact, when one's strength reached a certain level, it wasn't new to hide from the senses of the main gods. As far as Yang Chung was concerned, even if Prince Sargeras' strength wasn't as good as his, he had already reached the demigod level. Coupled with the physical advantages of the vampire race and the various blood spells with a long history, even if Yang Chung wanted to defeat him, it probably wouldn't be easy. Unless Yang Chung unsealed himself, he might not be able to win. One must know that although the ancestor of the vampire race, the demigod Cain, was the ancestor of the vampire race, the golden generation of the vampire race was generally believed to be the 3rd generation of the vampire race represented by Prince Sargeras. They were the pure-blood elites born after the complete evolution of the vampire race. The most direct proof was that as the 13 descendants of Cain, they had personally slaughtered their elders, the 2nd generation of the vampire race, and thus obtained the supreme control of the vampire race. Today, the Secret Party Camarilla and the Devil Party Sabbath were almost all managed by their children. Moreover, they were also a tenacious species that had survived Noah's flood. With the accumulation of time, their strength was constantly accumulating and growing. As early as the early days of human civilization, they were known as the generation closest to God. If Yang Chung hadn't obtained the power of the main god and was just an ordinary god, he might not even be a match for these 3rd-generation vampires. Yang Chung smiled at Lilith in a friendly manner, and then looked at Sargeras with interest for a while. "I've heard Lilith mention the prince's name, but I didn't expect him to look so young. In terms of beauty, even the gods would be jealous of the vampires." Sargeras stepped forward in an unusually gentlemanly manner and shook hands with Yang Chun. Both of them shook hands lightly, but the difference was that Yang Chen's hand was warm while Sargeras's was cold. When Lilith went to Huaxia to carry out a mission, she returned to the clan and talked about meeting Mr. Hades. It was truly a wonderful fate. Perhaps Sir Hades didn't know this, but he had once met the first Netherworld king, and their relationship was rather harmonious. However, that was something that happened more than 600 years ago. At that time, I hadn't even met Lilith's mother. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, the 2nd Pluto appeared before me. Sargeras said with a smile and a calm tone. Although Sargeras said it lightly, the people around him didn't feel relaxed at all. 600 years ago, even though they knew that vampires had a long lifespan, Sargeras' terrifying age still shocked the surrounding humans, especially Fodessa and the others. As for the first, second Hades, and Pluto, they didn't have the brains to figure out what they were. Lilith saw that her father was chatting with Yang Cheng and didn't include her. She couldn't help but tug at Sargeras' sleeve coquettishly. "Father, hurry up and get on the boat. It's so boring standing here." Sargeras looked at his daughter helplessly. He stroked Lilith's soft long hair with a doting expression and smiled. "All right, my little princess. You're really too impatient. Your Majesty Pluto, get on the boat too. These people from the Sword and the Stone are really boring. They're not worth talking to," Lilith said to Yang Cheng. Lola and the rest who were at the back had an ugly expression. Although they knew that the other party was powerful, it was still embarrassing to be looked down upon like that. Witch from the Covenant of Darkness, don't be too arrogant. You vampires may be powerful, but it doesn't mean we're afraid of you. The world is now ruled by us humans, Prince said as he stepped forward and glared at Lilith's back. Lilith turned around and glanced at him with disdain. "Talk to me when you're fully grown, kid." "You." Prince's face turned red. He wanted to flare up, but was stopped by Storm Lola again. Lola said to Sargeras with a humble smile, "Prince, as far as I know, you're no longer directly in charge of the secret party's operations. Why did you come all the way from your territory to attend this secret meeting?" "What a boring question. Isn't it obvious? The Sword and the Stone's people are here, and so are the Vatican. Aren't they here to seize the Sword of Thanatos? On the surface, they're here to deal with Apollo. But who doesn't know what they're up to?" Lilith interrupted before Sargeras could reply. Sargeras sighed and looked at Lola apologetically. "I only have one daughter, and I've spoiled her since she was young. Please don't mind her. The reason I'm here is, of course, to see if the Sword of Thanatos is as I've expected. Secondly, I haven't left my territory for almost a century, so I'm planning to take this opportunity to go for a walk." Upon hearing Sargeras' reply, Fodessa's face turned gloomy. These people obviously didn't respect their host, France. The main purpose of this secret meeting was to deal with Apollo and the realm of God, but these people only cared about the ownership of the artifact. Were France's and Europe's safety not even worth mentioning? Or did they not respect Apollo at all? After a casual discussion, they boarded the ship. Originally, Sargeras and Yang Cheng weren't on the invitation list, but after listening to their conversation, Fodessa didn't have the courage to stop them from boarding the ship. Moreover, since these people knew each other, he could just treat them as special guests attending the meeting. At this time, Fodessa could only make a last-minute change. At around 6 o'clock in the evening, all the invited organizations and individuals had boarded the ship. This made Fodessa and the other French members of the 7th Bureau heave a sigh of relief. At least the first step was successful. The facilities of the super cruise ship Louis XVI were quite luxurious. This time, it was specially transferred here, so all the guests went straight to the VIP rooms to rest. Because this meeting wasn't set for a day or a few days, the cruise ship had become a temporary high-end hotel to make up for the poor environment of the military island in the English Channel. Yang Cheng was also allocated a single luxurious room, but Yang Cheng wasn't interested in staying in the small room to watch boring TV alone. Half of the reason he came to Paris this time was for a vacation. Even if this was a secret meeting, he didn't want to focus on dealing with the mysterious robbers that might appear. Therefore, Yang Cheng followed the signs on the cruise ship and headed to the entertainment bar. He wanted to have a few drinks to satisfy his cravings. After all, he hadn't had the chance to drink in the past few days. If he met an old friend, it wouldn't be a bad idea to chat for a while. After all, he would return to Huaxia in a few days, and he didn't know when he would return to Europe again. The interior of the cruise ship was quite spacious. Yang Cheng walked for nearly 5 minutes before he found the karaoke bar located on the higher level of the cruise ship. At the same time, it was also where the bar was located. The neon lights flashed in front of him, and the sound of energetic dance music came from the door. The mix of jazz and blues had a strong sense of rhythm, making Yang Cheng feel light in an instant. However, Just as Yang Cheng was about to enter the karaoke bar, he immediately felt something was wrong. Yang Cheng hurriedly dodged to the side, avoiding the area near the door. At this moment, a burly figure flew out of the karaoke bar like a human cannonball, crashing into the steel wall opposite the door in a straight line. Bang! The impact of the human body and the steel wall made a muffled sound with a deafening tremor. Yang Cheng looked down and saw that it was a tan man wearing a denim shirt and tight-fitting trousers. At that moment, his stomach was facing the sky, and his forehead was bleeding. Looking at his appearance, he should be of Latin American descent. There was a fierce leopard's head tattooed on the man's arm, and his whole body's muscles showed a sense of explosive power. Jaguar. Yang Cheng recognized the man's origin. He should be one of the world's famous mercenaries, the Jaguar mercenary group headquartered in the Amazon. But why did violence happen when he just boarded the ship? Chapter 5:27. Even though Yang Cheng had some understanding of Panther, due to geographical reasons, he hadn't had much interaction with this mercenary organization in the past. He didn't have the time to bother with this fainted and heavily injured man. He walked around the man and entered the ballroom. Walking into the brightly lit ballroom, Yang Cheng immediately saw the source of the commotion. 4 ferocious big men from Jaguar were blocking 4 arrogant Caucasian men and women in blue leather jackets. Looking at their attire, Yang Cheng couldn't help but sigh. They were involved in everything. America's Blue Storm was really fated to be with him. They were involved in the Tibetan incident, Nijo Castle incident, and now that he was in the secret meeting, they were the first to cause trouble in front of him. However, Yang Cheng wasn't interested in joining them. He pretended to walk past them and sat down at the bar nearby. "Give me a glass of Jack Daniel." Yang Cheng casually asked the bartender for a glass of the most common American brand of liquor, just to see what would happen next. The bartender was specially picked from the army, so he wasn't intimidated by the fight outside. He immediately poured the drink and passed it to Yang Cheng in a professional manner. Yang Cheng looked at the 2 opposing sides. Seeing that the 4 of them were arguing about something, he found it rather boring. They had already started fighting, so why were they still dilly-dallying and not continuing? "Your eyes are really gloating." Suddenly, a familiar female voice sounded from the side to Yang Cheng. Yang Cheng turned his head to take a look and immediately widened his eyes in disbelief. Abbess. 2 seats away, a beautiful middle-aged woman in a black and red dress was sitting quietly with a glass of champagne in her hand. It was Abbess Yin Miao, whom he had just met before leaving the country. The reason why Yang Cheng didn't realize that Abbess Yin Miao was so close to him was because of her attire. Yang Cheng couldn't recognize her at first glance. At this moment, Abbess Yin Miao's original Taoist nun style was nowhere to be seen. Her cloud-like hair was tied up behind her head, and she had put on some makeup to hide the wrinkles on her face. A string of exquisite pearls hung in front of her chest, and she was wearing a black and red chiffon dress that accentuated her elegance. Even though Abbess Yin Miao was in her 60s, her strong internal energy helped her retain her youthful looks. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was a mature woman in her 40s. Yang Cheng took a closer look and felt pity for that old man Lin Jigua. "She's such a beautiful first wife. Why don't you cherish her?" Abbess Yin Miao blushed when she saw Yang Cheng staring at her. "Brat, don't think too much. I'm from your grandmother's generation. How can you stare at me like that?" Yang Cheng waved his hands and smiled bitterly. "Abbess, don't think too much. Even if you're really beautiful, I wouldn't have those thoughts. Don't worry, or it would be a huge misunderstanding. It's just my first time seeing you dressed like that, so I took a few more glances." "Umph." Abbess Yin Miao was relieved. She knew how much of a playboy Yang Cheng was. She had always felt that sending her granddaughter, Hui Lin, to Yang Cheng's side was a huge mistake on her part. But what was done couldn't be undone, and she felt that she owed senior brother Song Tianxing, which was why she had endured it until now. But if Yang Cheng was really so ridiculous that he even had thoughts about her, then Abbess Yin Miao would definitely bring Hui Lin back to her side, even if it meant falling out with him. This time, I'm basically the only representative of the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade to participate in this secret meeting, so it doesn't matter how I look. If I were to walk around in a Taoist robe, it would only stand out. It's better to change into a normal attire like this to look more ordinary, Abbess Yun Miao explained. Yang Cheng nodded. It made sense. A Taoist nun walking on the streets wouldn't be as inconspicuous as a married woman walking on the streets. Moreover, Abbess Yun Miao was still in charge of the Lin family's affairs. As the mistress of the house, she couldn't always wear that Taoist robe. Monks were supposed to be pure, so how could they meddle in worldly affairs? Abbess Yin Miao squinted her eyes at Yang Cheng. I thought you wouldn't come, but it seems like you've heard about the Sword of Thanatos. Are you here to snatch it away? Yang Cheng shook his head. I'm not in the mood. I'm just here to join the fun. There's something I'm worried about, so I'm here to see if it'll happen. Abbess Yin Miao could tell that Yang Cheng wasn't interested in the sword, but she didn't pursue the matter. After all, Yang Cheng didn't seem to want to explain much. Abbess, have you been watching all this while? How did it happen? Yang Cheng asked casually. Abbess Yin Miao raised her head and gestured to the Jaguar mercenaries. The big guy who was kicked out just now wanted to hook up with the woman from Blue Storm, but she didn't appreciate it and even joked with the other 3 Americans, which angered the big guy. In the end, the big guy wanted to make a move, but he wasn't a match for the 4 from Blue Storm. When you arrived, you were kicked out by the tallest American. Oh, Yang Chun said meaningfully. He glanced at the few guests who were sitting around the hall. Smiling, he said, everyone is sitting so calmly. It looks like you're all waiting for a good show. These boorish fellows from the Jaguars can't beat the 4 from Blue Storm. They're all genetically mutated mutants. I really don't understand what they're arguing about. Sigh. Hearing Abbess Yin Miao sigh, Yang Cheng took a sip of his wine and mumbled, that might not be the case. Abbess Yin Miao vaguely heard what Yang Cheng said, but she didn't take it seriously. She looked at the 4 from the Jaguars and shook her head. At this moment, the 4 from the Jaguars were burning with rage. Faced with Blue Storm's unapologetic and uncompromising attitude, even if they didn't want to cause trouble on the ship, they couldn't bring themselves to back down. Damned American beat asterisk starts. Do you really think we Jaguars are so easy to bully? I'll give you one last chance. Kneel down and apologize to Sloth. One of the bald men pointed at the man who had just woken up from his coma. The tan man's code name was Sloth. He sat on a chair by the door, panting and clutching his chest as he glared at the 4 from Blue Storm. Are you an idiot? Or have you all turned into gorillas after spending too much time in the jungle? The brunette from Blue Storm laughed mockingly. Trash that can be sent flying with a single kick wants to strike up a conversation with me? Are you even qualified to talk to us about the conditions of an apology or not? Mealy, let's not waste our breath on them, the tall American who had kicked them said coldly. Move, or I'll send you all flying like that guy. The eyes of the 4 were burning with rage. You gone too far. Sloth only said a few words, and you guys were so ruthless. Don't think that we'll be afraid of you, just because you're from America. If you don't give us justice today, we'll fight you to the death. As soon as the bald man finished speaking, a figure flashed in front of him. A hand suddenly grabbed the bald man's shoulder, but it was only a light grasp before it let go immediately. The bald man let out a blood-curdling scream and fell to the ground, his other hand clutching his shoulder that had been grabbed. Alan, don't you think you're talking too much? Do it. The man who flashed in front of the bald man was wearing sunglasses. He was lean and had a beard. He curled his lips and said to the tall American, Bastard, what did you do to Rhino? The remaining 3 immediately questioned the man in sunglasses when they heard Rhino's blood-curdling scream. The man in sunglasses snorted coldly. Nothing, just a few broken bones at his shoulder. This sentence immediately enraged the remaining 3 Jaguar warriors. The 3 of them almost simultaneously lunged at the Blue Storm members in a fighting stance. Unfortunately, although the 3 of them were elite mercenaries with top-notch combat skills, the 4 Blue Storm mutants were clearly much stronger than them. The tall American man didn't wait for one of the warriors to reach him. He raised his leg and kicked the warrior's chest from a meter away. Whoosh! The warrior was inexplicably sent flying by an invisible force, drawing a straight line and crashing into a steel wall more than 10 meters away, just like the sloth from before. The woman named Millie also appeared to be very relaxed. Facing the warrior who lunged at her, she only opened her mouth and said something. As for the burly man who was about to touch Millie, his body suddenly froze. He covered his ears with both hands and fell to the ground in pain, rolling on the ground. The last soldier was originally pouncing towards the sunglasses man. Unexpectedly, as soon as his hand grabbed the sunglasses man's shoulder, his hand emitted a caw-caw sound of bones cracking. The bones in his entire hand had shattered in an instant. Seeing the jaguar mercenaries wailing in pain, Abbess Yun Miao's brows furrowed. The difference is too big. These blue storm mutants are using sound waves that stimulate the brain, vibrations that are enough to shatter bones, and air manipulation abilities. One of them didn't even make a move. No matter how good these mercenaries are at fighting in the wild and using firearms, there's no way they can defeat them in close combat. Many of the onlookers felt that it was pointless, but they weren't too surprised. After all, although the American Blue Storm's abilities weren't as strong as those in the original Sword in the Stone, they relied on genetic technology and many high-tech products. But that didn't mean that the Blue Storm's people were the world's leading combatants. Most of the Sword in the Stone's ability users were born with bloodline and talent. But the Blue Storm's ability users, even normal people, had a chance of succeeding. They had the advantage in numbers. Yang Chung hadn't said a word. Now, he gulped down the wine in his glass and smacked his lips. Don't underestimate the Jaguar guys. There's no way they only sent 5 people. The key figures should be arriving soon. Abbess Yun Miao was stunned. She didn't understand what Yang Chung meant. Look, they're here. Yang Chung pointed at the door. Abbess Yun Miao looked over, her eyes filled with doubt. It was a woman who was dressed rather oddly. Her skin was the color of wheat, and there were colorful feathers on both sides of her black hair. The woman, on the other hand, was wearing a colorful dress that was similar to that worn by Chinese minority girls. What was even more puzzling was that there were a few different colored lines drawn on her face. Football fans often did this, but while they were drawing a national flag, this woman was scribbling on it. Some of the more observant people noticed that the woman didn't even wear shoes and walked into the hall barefoot. Chapter 528. The appearance of this oddly dressed woman attracted the attention of many people in the nightclub. It wasn't because she was beautiful, but because her outfit was too eye-catching. A black man from an unknown organization whistled and teased her loudly. "Miss, are you here to drink? I'm interested in your appearance. How much?" Instantly, the crowd roared with laughter. The woman ignored their teasing and strange gazes. Instead, she glanced at Rhino and the other Panther mercenaries lying on the ground, then glanced at Sloth, who was panting behind her. Sloth had somehow knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the woman. Then he said something in the indigenous language that no one else could understand. After listening, the woman nodded and walked towards the 4 people from Blue Storm. "You're their leader? What kind of person goes with what kind of head? I wonder where these barbarians came from. Are you going to stand up for them?" The female member, Millie, sneered. The strangely dressed woman didn't answer. Instead, she squatted down and placed a hand on Rhino's broken shoulder. Although the bald Rhino was in great pain, he immediately nodded to express his gratitude when he saw the woman's action. The 4 people from Blue Storm didn't know where this woman came from. Seeing that she didn't answer their questions, they couldn't be bothered to care. Looks like they're going to lick each other's wounds. I'm not interested in playing anymore. Let's go take a bath and stop wasting time here, the tall Alan said dully. I think so too. Let's go, guys. The man in shades smiled sarcastically at the people on the ground, then led the way to leave. However, before the 4 of them could leave the room, the bald Rhino, who had been silent all this time, suddenly shouted, "Stop!" The 4 of them were stunned. They turned around and were shocked to see that Rhino, who had been hugging his shoulder and finding it hard to even speak, had already stood up. Moreover, his body didn't seem to be injured at all. He was glaring at the 4 of them furiously. How is this possible? The bones from his shoulder to his elbow should have been broken. The man in shades who used the shock ability pushed his shades up and mumbled. Before they could understand how Rhinoceros recovered so quickly, the other 3 Jaguar mercenaries who had fallen actually stood up, The bystanders could clearly see that it was because this strangely dressed woman had placed her hands on their injured parts for a while. After the woman got the four mercenaries to stand up, she walked back to where Sloth was and placed her right hand on Sloth's injured chest. This time, the four members of Blue Storm could clearly see that the woman's hand was surrounded by a faint layer of milky white light, but it was very weak. A few seconds later, Sloth stretched his arms, the pained expression on his face gone. After bowing to the woman to express his gratitude, he glared at the four people from Blue Storm and said, "You will pay for your arrogance." Alan squinted at the strange woman and said, "Although I don't know who you are, it seems like you have some witchcraft in your hands. However, even if you can help them recover quickly, it doesn't mean that their strength is comparable to ours. What's with the nonsense? Put this woman down first and be done with it." The man in shades was an impatient person and couldn't be bothered to care too much. With his lean body, he was extremely fast and appeared in front of the woman in the blink of an eye. The palm that could shatter bones in an instant was about to touch the woman's thin shoulder. Bam! Suddenly, an electric arc exploded in front of the woman out of nowhere. Bluish-purple electric currents formed a powerful shield. The moment the man in Shade's hand was about to touch the woman, he was paralyzed and penetrated by the electric current. From the side, the electric sparks weren't small and glaring. If it weren't for the fact that the agent from Blue Storm had an extraordinary physique, a normal human would probably have been electrocuted on the spot. Even so, the man in shade screamed and retreated. One of his hands was already charred like a bear's paw roasted over charcoal. The few people who had been watching the show were stunned when they saw this scene. They completely changed their minds about this seemingly weak woman. What was this? A lightning ability user? That wasn't right. She could heal. The speed of her healing was much stronger than the Vatican's power of light. Abbess Yun Miao, who was sitting by the bar counter, was also shocked. She turned to look at Yang Chung and realized that Yang Chung didn't look surprised at all. She asked, "You know that woman?" Yang Chung shrugged. "No. Then how did you know that this woman wasn't normal?" Abbess Yun Miao asked curiously. Yang Chung said, "Even though I don't have much of a conflict with the people from Panther, I've done quite a few missions in the Amazon forest. I've also completed some of my training there. I do have a certain understanding of the composition and strength of Panther." As Abbess Yin Miao listened quietly, the people from Blue Storm were once again facing off against the 5 people from Panther and the woman. But this time, the people from Blue Storm couldn't advance, but they couldn't back down either. They didn't know what to do with that mysterious woman. Panther is a mercenary group with a long history. Actually, when the Europeans first landed in America, they already had their beginnings. At that time, the indigenous people of North and South America, including the Native Americans that still exist today, formed a guerrilla force to fight against the invaders. Unfortunately, although Panther was good at fighting in the jungle, they couldn't defend against the large number of Europeans and their guns and cannons. In the end, they could only retreat to some small, hidden bases. After a few hundred years of operation, they turned from an organization that fought against the invaders into a mercenary group. Almost all of Panther's members came from the indigenous tribes of America and some poor American countries. Even though they weren't rich, they were physically strong. Many of them were the descendants of black slaves who had escaped. Abbess, you should know that those black slaves who could survive all the way from Africa to America were all physically strong. Those black slaves who could escape the manor were even more outstanding. It could be said that almost all of their descendants possessed the strongest physique and innate genes. If we were to talk about which mercenary group had the best physique, Panther would undoubtedly be number 1. Abbess Yin Miao nodded, indicating that she understood as well. However, she was puzzled. These people are indeed physically strong, but they were taken down so easily by Blue Storm just now. It's obvious that they're not worthy of their name. Could it be that the problem is that woman? Yang Chung took the time to order another glass of whiskey. He took a sip and said, "That woman is a shaman." What? Abbess Yin Miao thought that she had heard wrong. Panther's mercenaries are physically strong, have rich combat experience, and are adept with firearms. However, this alone isn't enough to make them one of the top mercenary groups in the world. Their strength lies in the profession that has been passed down from the Native American civilization, shaman. Yang Chung squinted. Shamans can be said to be the shamans of the indigenous tribes, but they aren't like those deceptive charlatans. The shamans that have been passed down from the Native American civilization are not only responsible for sacrifices and divination, but they also possess some magical abilities. For example, the rapid healing just now, which is a witch doctor's method. Using electricity to form a shield to protect oneself and burn the opponent is a shaman's ability to manipulate the natural elements. That female shaman only used lightning. Actually, shamans can also use wind, water, and fire, which are natural elements. I've seen panthers battle before, and that's how I know about them. Abbess Yun Miao was in a daze. She said, "Why does it sound so mystical? Isn't it just a superpower user with multiple abilities?" "Ha!" Yang Chung laughed. "Abbess, you can't say that. Shaman's power comes from their faith, while superpower users' power comes from themselves. Maybe you don't believe in the saying that faith can give you power, but didn't the Vatican's holy knights and crusaders rely on their faith in the God of light to gain the power to fight against the covenant of darkness? You might think that shamans' healing and elemental powers are mystical, but don't foreigners think that Huaxia's yellow flame, iron brigades, martial arts, and internal energy are mystical? Even the ordinary citizens of Huaxia wouldn't believe that there are people in Huaxia who are capable of leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls." Abbess Yun Miao frowned, tacitly agreeing with Yang Cheng's words. Indeed, in this world, it wasn't strange for different civilizations to have different abilities. As long as one hadn't seen it before, it would be inconceivable. However, many things existed. It was just that one hadn't noticed them yet. "Hey, look, Abbess. The real show is about to begin." Yang Chung pointed at the two groups of people and laughed wickedly. Abbess Yin Miao looked over and couldn't shift her gaze away. The 5 mercenaries from Panther were already locked in battle with the 4 superpower users for Blue Storm. The 5 of them were in a pincer formation, and they were using military combat techniques to attack ferociously. The strange thing was that the 4 superpower users weren't able to easily defeat the 5 of them. It seemed like their abilities had lost their effectiveness. Tall Allen was good at using his aura. At one point, he wanted to use compressed air and then use a high-pressure ejection method to send his opponent's bald rhinoceros flying. However, no matter how he used the power of the high-pressure air, the rhinoceros would only pause for a moment before immediately pouncing on him to fight. Millie was even more helpless. She kept opening her mouth in an attempt to stimulate her opponent's brain with sound waves, but her opponent didn't seem to feel anything. The more they fought, the crazier they became, and a bloody scar had already appeared on Millie's face. The remaining man in shades was also in a miserable state. His speed was much faster than the others, but the 5 mercenaries were all on par with him in terms of speed. Moreover, their strength was surging and endless. Every time the man in shades wanted to shatter the mercenaries' bones, he would be depressed to find that their body's strength had increased by a few times. The effect of the shockwave was actually not enough to shatter their bones. At the back of the battle, the female shaman stood there quietly. She raised one of her hands and occasionally drew some strange red, transparent patterns in the air, like a leisurely and elegant painter. Every time she finished drawing a pattern, the pattern would attach itself to the body of the mercenary in battle and disappear in an instant. Chapter 529. Abbess Yin Miao was dumbfounded at the sight. She had lived for more than 60 years, but she had never seen anything like this before. That female shaman only needed to draw what she saw as scribbles, and she was able to turn 5 boorish men who were no match for the enemy into an overwhelming advantage. Looking at it from another perspective, if the 2 sides were evenly matched, wouldn't the side with the shaman be able to instantly kill the other side? That shaman, what's she doing? Abbess Yun Miao couldn't help but ask. Yang Chung was watching with great interest as well. He explained slowly, "It's a totem. You can understand it as the talismans used by Huaxia's Taoists. The difference is that they don't need cinnabar or anything of the sort. All they need is the shaman's own mental strength to draw it. Totems are also a type of magic that can strengthen the panther warriors in all aspects. Look, be it in terms of strength, toughness, or agility, they're completely different from before. The blue storm mutants can no longer deal any damage to them. Abbess Yun Miao naturally understood that the people from Blue Storm were already in a terrible predicament, struggling bitterly. If it weren't for the fear of embarrassing themselves in front of so many countries, they would have run away long ago. Isn't that woman able to use sound waves to attack? Can she block them too? Abbess Yun Miao asked in confusion. Yang Chung said matter-of-factly, "What's so difficult about that? Sound waves only stimulate the brain to achieve the effect of controlling one's nerves. That shaman has lowered the sensitivity of these 5 people to the lowest possible level. Even if they're stimulated, they won't feel anything. Simply put, these 5 people are living, breathing human flesh machines." Abbess Yun Miao was shocked. Human flesh machines? Could they actually reach such a barbaric level? Abbess, look carefully. That female shaman is planning to end the battle, Yang Chung reminded as he raised his wine glass. Right at this moment, the female shaman's brown eyes suddenly turned blood red. Following that, as she muttered an incantation, her 2 hands quickly drew a pattern in the air that was more complicated than any of the previous totems. When the blood-red totem flew towards the bald rhinoceros and covered his strong body, the rhinoceros immediately underwent a huge change. In front of everyone's eyes, Rhinoceros's upper body actually began to forcefully grow taller, accompanied by the crack of its bones, starting from its abdomen, chest, arms, and even the muscles of its face began to expand wildly. In the blink of an eye, the rhinoceros's 2-meter-long body had grown to a height of 5 meters. Rhino's tight-fitting black short-sleeved shirt had long been torn apart by his huge body. The bronze-colored muscles on his upper body were like a marble sculpture from the Renaissance period. However, his appearance was simply like a monster from a sci-fi movie. Rhino's sudden change almost made the 4 from Blue Storm forget where they were. They stared dumbly at the bald rhino, speechless. As for the other 4 jaguar warriors, they retreated to the side and looked mockingly at the 4 from Blue Storm. Suddenly, Rhinoceros's tiger eyes shone with a bewitching blood-red light. With a loud roar, he raised his football-like fist and smashed it towards the tall Alan, who was closest to him. "Watch out!" The other middle-aged man in the Blue Storm, who hadn't used his special ability all this time, shouted and stretched his hands forward. A visible light blue light sphere shield appeared in front of the 4 of them, blocking the violent punch. Boom! With a muffled sound, a large part of the light blue shield was actually dented by the impact. It's an anti-particle barrier. No wonder this guy hasn't used his ability all this time. This kind of move is only good for defense. Yang Chung smiled evilly. Unfortunately, they underestimated the power of the shaman's bloodlust spell. Abbess Yun Miao, who was at the side, thought that Yang Chung would say that the power of the anti-particle was not to be underestimated. She didn't expect him to say that it wasn't enough. In the next second, Abbess Yun Miao immediately understood why Yang Chung would say that. Rhinoceros, who had been cast with the bloodlust spell, laughed sinisterly. He didn't even retract his fist that had just been blocked. Instead, he took a step forward. Bang! The fist pierced through the anti-particle barrier, which could withstand the impact of the rocket launchers, and hit Alan, who didn't manage to dodge in time. It was hard to tell how much weight the fist carried. The seemingly strong Alan only took a single blow before he was sent flying. Half of his face was distorted beyond recognition. Rhinoceros's revenge wasn't over yet. Without waiting for the other 3 to retreat, he raised his fist and smashed it again. Whether it was speed, strength, or accuracy, Rhinoceros made the 3 from Blue Storm powerless to resist. Almost 1 for 1, the 3 of them were sent flying and smashed into the wall. Other than the music playing, no one made a sound. Everyone stared blankly at the monster-like rhinoceros, who had single-handedly defeated the 4 arrogant Americans. That's the bloodlust spell? Abbess Yun Miao watched carefully. That kind of speed, even she might not be able to dodge it. That kind of power wasn't something she could withstand either. She couldn't help but be shocked. Yang Qing nodded. That's right. Although the bloodlust spell is powerful, if it wasn't for Rhinoceros's strong physique, he would have died from the explosion. So, if Panther's warriors are the leopard's body and flesh, then the Panther shamans are the leopard's brain. Those, Abbess Yun Miao exclaimed. Don't tell me there's more than one shaman like that girl? Yang Chung thought it was ridiculous. Abbess, you're underestimating Panther too much. Panther's regular troops have at least 1,000 people. How could there only be one shaman? Even if there aren't many, there's still more than enough to count with two hands. It's because of the existence of shamans that they can roam the Americas. Otherwise, they would have long been wiped out by the special forces organized by the government. Abbess Yin Miao's heart was indescribably agitated. In the end, she could only sigh. There are indeed crouching tigers and hidden dragons overseas. Although our Yellow Flame Iron Brigade has been working hard to recruit new blood, it seems like we've been too lax. When I return this time, I'll have a good talk with General Kai and see if we can add more people like the Berserk Dragon Reserve Squad. Yang Chung didn't care about those things. He pretended not to hear Abbess Yun Miao's nagging. Otherwise, if he were to participate and help them train, wouldn't that be asking for trouble? The battle that started because of a quarrel ended just as quickly as it started. In the end, Panther turned the tables on Blue Storm in a situation that most people didn't expect. Panther's members didn't plan on staying in the nightclub. After the battle ended and their bodies recovered, they followed the female shaman and left with their chests puffed out. As for the 4 Blue Storm members who had been lying on the ground, they waited for the other party to leave before carefully getting up and leaving the hall through a small door. This caused quite a few people to laugh at them. However, it was also because of this battle that many organizations came up with new plans for the Sword of Thanatos. Everyone realized that some opponents weren't as strong as they thought, and some weren't as weak as they seemed. Yang Chung finished the whiskey in his hand and stood up. He waved his hand at Abbess Yun Miao. Abbess, I'm going to see an old friend. I don't want them to misunderstand that I'm being disrespectful to you. Abbess Yun Miao looked like a charming and beautiful woman. Yang Chung wouldn't be able to take it if he was misunderstood. Abbess Yun Miao shot a disdainful glance at Yang Chung. Although she looked young, she was already old enough to be a grandmother. She wouldn't care too much about misunderstandings. Yang Chung leisurely walked around a few pillars and across the dance floor. He came to a corner near the stage. This area was secluded and there weren't many people. After all, there weren't many people on the ship. Around a few round sofas, a dozen handsome men in suits had already stood up. One of them was Sauron, who had already boarded the ship. The group of people watched Yang Cheng's arrival. When Yang Chung walked in front of them, they bowed at the same time and greeted Yang Chung in their own languages. Yang Chung gestured for everyone to sit down. Don't make such a big fuss. I thought you guys understood my intentions since you didn't come over on your own. Sauron, didn't I tell you to pretend we don't know anything? Your Majesty Pluto, I thought you didn't want to hide it anymore. Sauron explained expressionlessly. Yang Chung looked left and right. Fortunately, no one was paying attention to them. He smiled and said, It's not like you guys don't know how many enemies I have. More than half of the organizations on this ship have a grudge against me. If they know I'm on the ship, even if it's nothing to be afraid of, it'll still be troublesome. Everyone laughed heartily. They were happy to see Yang Chung again after nearly 2 years. Thinking back to those passionate days when they made enemies everywhere, they thought of many interesting things. Yang Chung sat in the middle of the crowd and looked around carefully. His eyes were filled with nostalgia, and his tone softened. I wasn't here for 2 years. Sauron, you've been managing Sea Eagles and Zero alone. It's been hard on you. But now, it seems that everyone is doing well. There's less of the smell of blood on you and more of a human touch. Your Majesty Pluto, the orders that Zero takes on every year are 1/3 of the previous years. If it weren't for the fact that our assassins are the best in the world, we wouldn't be the world's #1 assassin organization in terms of the number of orders we take. Most of the time, everyone has switched to other professions, so it's natural that things have changed. A bearded Middle Eastern man laughed. You're Abdul, right? Why are you growing a beard? Yang Chung held back his laughter. Abdul was stunned and said happily, Your Majesty Pluto still remembers me. I'm really flattered. As for this beard, it's because I'm married and my wife thinks I look good with a beard. Yang Chun was surprised. You're married? You're not an assassin anymore? Not anymore. I've been tired of it for a long time. I'm now just a regional representative of Zero. The year Your Majesty Pluto returned to Huaxia, I also threw my weapon into the Red Sea. Now I'm the father of a 1-year-old child, Abdul said proudly. Sauron said with a stiff face, although most assassins don't have a good ending. But because of Your Majesty Pluto's protection, even after our assassins retire, no one will easily take revenge on us for fear of bearing your anger. There are also many people who directly move their whole family into the Forgotten Realms. If Your Majesty Pluto has time, you can go there and take a look. That old man Ron takes good care of that place. He said that he's waiting for Your Majesty Pluto to return and give you a surprise. The other members of Sea Eagles and Zero praised him as well, sincerely hoping that Yang Chun would go back soon to take a look. Yang Chun looked at his subordinates who were smiling. It would be a lie if he wasn't touched. He slowly took out a cigarette from his shirt pocket, and someone beside him immediately lit it for him. Yang Chun took a puff and said, I have to take some time to go and take a look at that old man, Ron. When the time comes, I'll also go there and see how everyone's living conditions are. Since I've publicly said that the area is under my protection, I can't really not go there for a few years. But what I'm most gratified about is that everyone's faces aren't as bleak as before. Your eyes used to be empty and numb, but now it makes me feel very warm. It seems that my decision to return to Huaxia and stop the strategic expansion was the right one. Now, all of you make me feel a real sense of accomplishment. Listening to Yang Cheng's words, everyone was silent and had a smile on their face. It was obvious that they had a deep understanding. Right at this moment, Yang Chun felt something. Frowning, he raised his head to look at the sofa next door. On the back of the sofa, there was an unfamiliar figure lying horizontally. It was a white-haired man wearing a blue samurai suit. His face was cold and handsome, and his almond-shaped eyes were a little demonic. His white hair was very long and meticulously combed at the back of his head. A hexagonal samurai sword with a wooden shell hung from his waist. Compared to ordinary samurai swords, this sword was more like a woman's decoration. What made Yang Chung feel unusual was that this guy suddenly appeared there and lay there. Even his own perception ability almost didn't capture his arrival. The white-haired man saw that Yang Chung saw him and grinned evilly. He took out a wine bottle from nowhere. The porcelain bottle looked like it was specially used to contain sake. Holding the wine bottle, the white-haired man took a sip and exhaled in enjoyment. At this time, the others also saw Yang Cheng's abnormality. They followed Yang Cheng's gaze and found the white-haired Japanese samurai. This time, everyone's heart instantly jumped to their throats. Why? It was very simple. Everyone here was a world-class mercenary or killer. A guy was lying on the sofa next to them unknowingly, and they didn't even realize it until now. This person was definitely not ordinary. Chapter 530. Sauron and the others subconsciously began to focus. They had never seen this white-haired man before. They did not know where he came from or whether he was a friend or foe. The white-haired man saw everyone's nervous attitude and curled his lips arrogantly. The leader of Zero and Sea Eagles is only at this level. What a disgrace. What did you say? Hearing the man's provocative words, Abdul's eyes instantly turned from calm to sharp. The others also looked unfriendly. Although they knew that this man had a strange background and was probably not easy to deal with, they were not afraid of him. Being ridiculed in front of Yang Chung made the mercenary leaders and assassin leaders feel embarrassed. The white-haired man scratched his ear and took another sip of sake. I'm not interested in arguing with you. I'm just curious. I'm here to see if this man is your leader who's been cowardly for more than 2 years, the guy called Hades. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone present felt as if they had sunk into darkness. Killing intent rose in everyone's heart. If the white-haired man had looked down on them, they could still say something. After all, They were not at the age where they were stupid. However, they could not tolerate Yang Chung speaking so disrespectfully in public. To many of them, if it wasn't for Yang Chun, they would just be drifting duckweed, with no foundation to speak of. They might have been killed by their enemies many years ago, or they might have been constantly worried about being assassinated by their enemies. They didn't even dare to have families or children, because they could only rely on themselves. No one would be responsible for their lives. It was Yang Cheng's appearance that allowed this group of cold-blooded and gloomy figures to stand on the stage of the world. They were not afraid of the anger and hatred of any country, and could once again be human. If one were to say that these soldiers who had survived from the battlefield and climbed out of a pile of corpses had any so-called faith, it would undoubtedly be Yang Chun. "You deserve to die." The hot-tempered Abdul had just said that he would no longer be an assassin, but now he could not hold it in anymore. A scarlet dagger had appeared in his left hand. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, Abdul had already moved from his original seat to the sofa where the white-haired man was lying. The scarlet dagger looked as if it had never been wiped clean by blood. In the darkness, it was like a dark red lightning as it slashed across the white-haired man's throat. Even though he had not made a move for many years, Abdul had not lost the cleanliness of the world's top assassin. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, he suddenly charged forward, slit the throat. Without the slightest bit of sloppiness, it was done in less than half a second. This is the price for being disrespectful to His Majesty Pluto. Abdul sneered disdainfully as he felt his dagger slit the white-haired warrior's throat. In his eyes, this man was already dead. Almost everyone else present also believed that the white-haired man was already dead. They were very clear about Abdullah's methods. Even if he was a ninja of Yamata's sect, who was famous for his speed, if he wasn't a Jinin, he wouldn't be able to dodge that sudden attack just now. As for the ninja of Jinin level, Hanya is the only one left in Yamata's sect. However, when Yang Chung saw this scene, he only narrowed his eyes with a trace of surprise. In the next second, when Abdul was about to put away his dagger, the dead man, in front of him suddenly became blurry. Yes, it became blurry, like the shadow of the moon in the water. After being disturbed by the ripples, it gradually became unclear and started to dissipate. In the end, it actually disappeared. "Big guy, why are you in a daze?" The white-haired man's voice suddenly came from behind Abdul. Abdul's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously stabbed the dagger towards the man's heart. It hit. Abdul felt his dagger piercing his heart. That feeling, he would definitely not be wrong. In this half of his life, he had pierced through too many hearts. However, everyone present, including Abdul, once again saw an inconceivable scene. The white-haired man's figure, which had been pierced through, became blurry. After a few ripples, it disappeared once again. In the next moment, the white-haired man's feet were already on the sofa in front of Abdul. No one knew when, but a pipe had appeared in his mouth, and he was smoking it in satisfaction. "Boring. I'm not playing with you anymore." The white-haired man said something that could anger the assassins to death. Abdul was about to attack angrily again, but unexpectedly, before he could do anything, his chin was kicked by the man's heel. "Ah!" Abdul cried out in pain. His body flew 3 meters away in a parabola and landed heavily on the ground. Although this wouldn't cause much damage to Abdul, the fact that he was sent flying so easily was enough to prove that it was meaningless for Abdul to continue fighting. At this moment, everyone present also recognized the reality. Although they were unwilling, the white-haired man's strength wasn't something they could deal with at their level. Involuntarily, everyone looked at Yang Chung with great anticipation. Yang Chung rubbed his forehead in distress. He sighed and asked, "Although I've never seen you before, nor do I know why you're here to provoke me. I'm guessing that you're from Japan's Takamagara, right? But I'm guessing that you should be from Japan's Takamagara. The move you just used isn't something that can be done with ordinary ninjutsu or jinjutsu. Otherwise, Abdul wouldn't have been unable to differentiate the real from the fake." The white-haired man blew out 2 rings of smoke and looked down at him from above. "What are you trying to say? You really don't know how to chat." Yang Chung smiled bitterly and stood up. I wanted to ask why you came looking for me. We can talk things out. I'm here on vacation, not to fight. However, since you've already kicked my brother out, I feel bad if I don't help him get back at you." The white-haired man grinned. "I was waiting for you to say that. However, before we fight, I could tell you my name and background." "Oh, I'm Nurere, the general of Takamagura," Nurere said plainly. Yang Chung was surprised. As far as he knew, although Takamagara existed, the monsters had always been minding their own business. At most, some of them had a closer relationship with each other. This man was actually the general of Takamagara. Judging from the way he addressed him, he had already unified all the monsters in Takamagara. The nine-tailed fox and the nine-lives demon cat that he killed in Nijo Castle were stronger monsters in Takamagara. If they had already formed an organization back then, they wouldn't have gone against him on their own. One could imagine that the unification of Takamagara was achieved in just a few months after he returned to Zhonghai from Japan. It's not good to be in a daze. While Yang Chung was thinking about these things, Nurere voice suddenly rang in Yang Cheng's ears. Yang Chung didn't even think his battle instincts made him tilt his head backwards. Whoosh! The sound of air being torn reverberated from where his head was. Nurere six-edged wooden scabbard pierced right through. Nurere wasn't too surprised that Yang Chung was able to dodge it. He took back the scabbard and tapped it on his shoulder. It was as if he was holding the scabbard to scratch his itch and not his weapon. "Wow, that's incredible speed." "Sure enough, the one in front is different," Nurere said lazily. Yang Chung couldn't help but laugh. He laughed happily. This not only puzzled Sauron and the others, but also Nurere. "Pluto, why are you laughing?" Nurere asked. "I'm laughing. Why do you look so much like me when I'm at work?" Yang Chung rubbed his chin and looked at Nurere carefully. "No wonder my wife always says that I'm not serious. My appearance and my tone are indeed not very likable. However, since you look like me, I'll support you. This look is actually quite good." A strange expression flashed across Nurere face. He turned his neck and said, "Do you know why I'm looking for you?" "I don't know. I don't really care about the reason. I've killed many of your people from Takamagara. There are countless people in the world who want to eat my flesh and drink my blood. If I have to find out the reason, they won't even need to do anything. I'll be dead tired." Yang Chung shrugged. A trace of coldness flashed across Nurere's eyes. He smiled evilly and said, "Even if you don't know, I have to tell you, 2 years ago, the snow lady you killed on the island was my fiancée." Yang Chung was stunned. Nurere was also looking for him because he was related to the snow lady. Back then, Nine-Tailed Fox and Cat Demon wanted revenge because they were sisters with the snow lady. And this man was actually the snow lady's fiancé. Yang Chung couldn't help but feel vexed. He brought this upon himself. Because he killed the snow lady and the others, 17 left him, and Nijo Castle almost entered the cycle of reincarnation. Now, the general of Takamagura appeared to cause trouble for him. "Do you know why I insisted on telling you about this?" Nurere asked. Yang Chung shook his head. "I can't even guess the thoughts of humans. How can I guess the thoughts of you demons?" Although no one had ever proven that these people from Takamagura were monsters cultivated from animals, plants, or inanimate objects, it was a fact that they weren't humans. "Let me tell you." Nurere raised a sheathed knife in his hand and pointed it at Yang Chung. "Because I'm going to make my move now." Chapter 531. As soon as he finished speaking, the wooden scabbard in Nurere's hand buzzed and shot towards Yang Cheng's forehead like a bullet. Although it was incredibly fast, it didn't pose much of a threat to Yang Chung. With a slight dodge, he was able to avoid the scabbard. After the seemingly fragile wooden hexagonal scabbard was dodged, it was directly inserted into the steel wall behind it. It actually did not go in. The name of this scabbard is Yomi Kaimaru. It never kills humans, only monsters and ghosts. However, you're not a human. As Nurere introduced the short scabbard in his hand, he appeared 1 meter in front of Yang Chung. He raised his hand, and the scabbard fell. It seemed like the simplest move, but it was the most effective and difficult to avoid. In Yang Cheng's eyes, Nururahayon's swordsmanship was even more ferocious than that of the ground ninja Noriko Okawa. Moreover, the seemingly light scabbard fell like a thunderous iron hoof or a surging tide. It was unavoidable. Good swordsmanship. Yang Cheng was a little interested in fighting because he knew that Nururahayon was a real expert. Seeing that the scabbard was about to fall on his skull, the endless resolve restoration scripture, innate chi in Yang Cheng's body naturally formed an invisible shield. When the scabbard touched the edge of his body, it was blocked for a few milliseconds. Yang Cheng used this time calmly. He tilted his head a few centimeters and tilted his body. At the same time, Yang Cheng's hand gathered enough strength to smash Nururahayon's body. He swept his palm over domineeringly. Immediately after, a strange feeling appeared in Yang Cheng's mind. His hand had indeed touched Nururahayon's body, but his profound fighting instinct told Yang Cheng that it was all fake. Sure enough, as Yang Cheng expected, Nururahayon, who had been hit, dissipated into the air like cherry blossom petals. When Yang Cheng looked up, Nururahayon was already 3 meters away from him. The Yamakirimaru in his hand was slender and gleaming with a cold light. Is this your witchcraft or your ultimate skill? It's such a headache. Yang Cheng regretfully retracted his hand. Nururahayon did not answer. Instead, he asked, "Did you unseal yourself just now?" Yang Cheng was taken aback for a moment. Then he laughed and said, "Unseal? How is that possible? You're not a god. If I unseal you, I'll be violating the treaty of gods. Don't joke with me. Then how did you block my attack?" For the first time, Nururahayon furrowed his brows and said, "I grew up on the coast of Okinawa. I've been practicing my swordsmanship for 20 years. I believe that there's no one in this world who can avoid my sword without paying a price. Although you've become a god, if you hadn't unsealed yourself, how could you have blocked my saber?" 20 years. Yang Cheng suddenly realized why Nururahayon had only unified Takamagara recently. It turned out that he had been practicing his swordsmanship all this while. Therefore, it was reasonable that he only found out about the death of Yukiana recently. It was understandable that a demonic guy who had been practicing his swordsmanship for 20 years could carry the aura of a magnificent army with just a swing of his saber. Takamagara fella, don't be too arrogant. Even if His Majesty Pluto was unsealed, he's still not someone you can match. One of the 0 assassins cursed. Yang Cheng gestured for them not to interrupt. He looked left and right. Fortunately, there were not many people on the ship and there were no passers-by. Otherwise, he would not have made a move here. Yang Cheng waved at Nururahayon and said, "Continue. As for why I was able to avoid it, I can tell you that it's because I've practiced Hua Xia's internal energy. But now, I'm very interested in your sorcery. Come and fight me again. I want to see it a few more times." "Are you humiliating me?" Nururahayon's expression turned cold. Judging from Yang Cheng's attitude, he obviously did not see him as a threat. Yang Cheng chuckled and didn't explain. What he wanted to do was to provoke this fellow. Nururahayon did not say anything else. Suddenly, he grasped the hilt of his saber with both hands. Then, he pointed the tip of the saber downwards and released his hands. The saber blade did not make a sound when it hit the ground, as the onlookers expected. Instead, it sank into the ground. Bright mirror. Sure sway. Nururahayon softly spat out the 4 Chinese characters and closed his eyes. Just as Nururahayon closed his eyes, Yang Cheng was shocked to find that the guy had disappeared in front of his eyes. How is this possible? Even if he was invisible, he should still be able to sense his opponent's aura. But this time, Yang Cheng really did not feel anything. Not only Yang Cheng, but Sauron and the rest who were watching nervously from the sidelines were also shocked by this strange scene. It was as if Nururahayon had evaporated from the arena. No one could sense his presence. Of course, no one was stupid enough to think that he was no longer there. Just as everyone, including Yang Cheng, was looking around, a moonlight saber light slashed down from the back of Yang Cheng's shoulder. Yang Cheng's superb combat instincts allowed him to react almost at the same time. He leaned forward to avoid the attack, but his clothes were still cut by the saber light. Yang Cheng turned around abruptly. His eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Nururahayon, who had appeared behind him. If not for his innate chi protecting his body, Yang Cheng could imagine that even if his arm was not cut off, it would still be cut open. Although he could heal quickly, the fact that Nurera Hyan was able to injure him was already terrifying. Nurera Hyan sneered as he glanced at Yang Cheng. He stood sideways with a mocking look in his eyes. It's not over yet. After saying that, Nurera Hyan's figure once again disappeared in front of Yang Cheng's eyes. This time, Yang Cheng did not wait any longer. He immediately circulated his innate chi and released an invisible shockwave around his body. Bang! Nurera Hyan's figure suddenly appeared in midair. He was sent flying by the explosive force of the innate chi and hit the ceiling of the karaoke hall. Sure enough, if not for Yang Cheng's quick reaction, he would have suffered a small loss from the next attack. Nurera Hyan's clear mirror water technique was finally broken by Yang Chen's deadly method, which made the spectators heave a sigh of relief. They knew that His Majesty Pluto could not be defeated. The crowd was reassured. Although Nurera Hyan was sent flying and hit the ceiling, he did not suffer any substantial injuries. He only got some dust on his body. After landing on the ground, he waved his sleeves. You used Huaxia's internal energy again? Nurera Hyan snorted. You have some skills, but it's not that profound. If I had used more strength, you might not have been able to send me flying. Yang Cheng was looked down upon, but he was not annoyed. He was also too lazy to tell Nurera Hyan that he had only used less than 20% of his innate chi. He smiled and said, Again? I don't think you only used this one move. I'm sure you didn't use your full strength. I want to see how far you can go. Nurera Hyan shook his head and said, I'm not here to duel with you. I'm just here to see if you have the strength to fight with me. Since you've proven yourself, it won't be too late for me to fight with you when we're competing for this sword of Thanatos on the island. Yang Cheng was a little disappointed. He did not intend to fight at that time. He had no interest in the sword. Moreover, he felt like a clown fighting in front of so many people. However, Yang Cheng was too lazy to explain. Since Nurera Hyan was not in the mood to fight, he would let him be. He could also take some time to think about how Nurera Hyan's strange invisibility technique was achieved. Nurera Hyan stretched out his hand, and the wooden scabbard that was stuck in the steel wall flew back and wrapped itself around the blade. It was like magic. However, just as the onlookers were enjoying the novelty of this technique, the next scene froze them. They saw a human head. Yes, it was a human head. A human head flew out from behind a pillar and swayed in front of Nurera Hyan. It was the head of a young man with delicate features. Then, the head spoke. General, the Maoqiang prostitute was drinking with a few Soviet metal agents. She had sex with a bearded agent and was carried back to her room by the bearded agent. Nurera Hyan frowned and rubbed his temples. Flying barbarian, how many times have I told you to look after your body? Don't always move your head. You've forgotten to move your body. Did I forget my body? Flying barbarian looked down and saw that it was empty. Immediately, a headless young man ran over from not far away. After contacting the head, they finally fused into a person. I'm sorry, General. I was anxious. You know, when a Maoqiang prostitute sleeps with a man, then Flying barbarian curled his lips. Nurera Hyan smiled playfully. Are you not willing to let the woman you like sleep with another man? Or do you not want to provoke the Soviet metal agents? Of course I'm not afraid of them. Flying barbarian blushed. He knew that he had spilled the beans. Ha! Nurera Hyan laughed and patted flying barbarian's body. Let's go. Call the Maoqiang prostitute out. Otherwise, that poor bearded man will turn into a dead hairball. Nurera Hyan turned his head and gave Yang Cheng a meaningful smile. Then, he left the scene with flying barbarian. After a while, Sauron and the others gulped and realized what had happened. They walked up to Yang Cheng and asked, Your Majesty Pluto, are those people really monsters? Yang Cheng smiled mysteriously. You mean the guy with the head separated from his body? I know a little about that monster. He's called the Flying Barbarian. According to the legends, he's not a bad monster. In the middle of the night, his head will separate from his body and wander around. His ears will be his wings, and his mouth will eat bugs. When dawn comes, he will fly back to his body. But when the sun rises, he will forget everything. Of course, it's just a legend. This is the first time I've seen one in real life. Listening to Yang Chen's excited description, even though Sauron and the others had experienced hundreds of battles, they still felt a chill down their necks. Chapter 532. In the city of Paris, in the hospital where Harry was staying. At night, the corridors of the hospital were quiet. Occasionally, one or two nurses would pass by with a cart. Most of the medical staff had already left work. Lynn Rawashi and Stern bought some fruits and snacks after eating an authentic French feast. Then, they went to the hospital to visit Harry, who was still recovering. Lynn Rawashi was currently sitting by little Huss's bed, looking a little uncomfortable. It wasn't because she had to treat this pair of unscrupulous siblings for half a day, but because she couldn't stand their mushy actions and emotional words from time to time. What made Lynn Rawashi want to run away even more was the siblings' praise for her. They said that she was as kind as an angel on earth, as the Virgin Mary, as the goddess of love. She did not know if the siblings had never been treated to a meal since they were young, but because of her generosity, their bootlicking skills were on full display. If they did not have the qualifications to attend the Paris Fashion Week, Lynn Rawashi would even doubt if they were really famous nobles. Harry's mother was sitting on the other side, peeling an apple for her child. She felt helpless about Lynn Rawashi's enthusiasm and kept hesitating on how to express her gratitude. "Miss Lynn, please don't refuse. When Harry is discharged from the hospital tomorrow or the day after, please come to our house. I also know that Miss Lynn is not a young lady from an ordinary family. Just take it as a token of our gratitude." Harry's mother invited again. Looking at the mother's sincere and slightly pleading expression, Lynn Rawashi felt that it would be too much to refuse again, so she smiled and nodded. "Sister is going to Harry's house? That's great." Harry immediately sat up, his little face full of excitement. "Harry, lie down. You're being disobedient again." Harry's mother scolded and made Harry lie down again. Harry snorted arrogantly, then pouted and said, "It would be even better if Dad could come home. We can entertain Sister and the others together." "Them?" Stern, who had been whispering to Alice at the door, suddenly turned around and said with a smile, "Little friend, did you say them just now? So we were invited to? Haha, you're too polite. But we are free, and we are very willing to accompany Miss Lynn to your house." Harry stared blankly at the shameless Stern. He really wanted to explain that he had an uncle named Yang, and that Harry didn't know the Stern siblings. "You're all Miss Lynn's friends. Of course we welcome you." Harry's mother immediately agreed. Lynn Rawashi reached out and rubbed her temples. She had a headache. Were these siblings really glued to her like sticky candy? How could they not even let go of the words of child? Do they have any shame? At this moment, someone knocked on the ward door. "I'll open it." Stern took the initiative to walk to the door and open it. When he opened the door, the person standing outside was none other than Goodman, whom he had not seen for a day. "Why are you here?" Upon seeing Goodman, Lynn Rawashi's expression turned back to her usual cold self as she asked. Goodman was wearing a white suit and red tie, as usual. He greeted Harry's mother politely, then greeted Stern and the rest before replying, "Rawashi, I would like to invite you for dinner tonight. I know that Mr. Yang is not here, and you must be lonely." Sensing that something was wrong with his words, Lynn Rawashi shook her head and said, "It's fine. I'll be with Stern and Alice. You can go about your business." The smile on Goodman's face froze as he stared blankly at Lynn Rawashi. After a long time, Goodman sneered and scratched his head. He lowered his head and said in a gloomy tone, "Lynn Rawashi? Lynn Rawashi, I gave you one last chance, but you still gave it up." "Goodman, what are you talking about?" Lynn Rawashi felt that something was wrong with Goodman's current behavior. She had a bad premonition when she heard what he said. "Clap, clap." Goodman didn't answer and only clapped his hands lightly. Suddenly, a few black-clothed men wearing caps and tall men who looked like police officers barged into the ward. If one were to take a closer look, they would notice that there was a golden sun pattern imprinted on the chest area of their clothes. Lynn Rawashi's pretty face turned cold as she stood up abruptly. "Goodman, what do you mean by this?" Haha, what do I mean? Goodman raised his head. His face was filled with mockery. Lin Ruashi, do you know why I've always been the director of Ulay International in Europe? Lin Ruashi didn't speak. She knew that Goodman didn't want to listen to her reason. Goodman's eyes were filled with darkness as he said, I joined Ulay International as soon as I graduated from university. The old CEO promoted me because of my outstanding ability and not because I flattered her. Back then, I planned to leave Ulay International a few times. With my ability, I could totally use my connections to become my own boss. But that old woman told me that if I did a good job, not only would she let me take the position of Ulay International CEO, but she would also help me get together with her granddaughter, which is you. Lin Ruashi was stunned. She had never heard her grandmother mention this before. But looking at Goodman's expression, it seemed to be true. Judging from your expression, I can tell that old woman didn't tell you about this. That's right. She lied to me. She sent me to Europe, saying that she wanted to train me and give me the position of director. She knew very well that I was the best candidate here. But to make me work for Ulay willingly, she used you as a bait. Actually, it's not like I didn't know that she wanted to use me. But I believe that as long as I worked hard to expand the business in Europe and achieve outstanding results, one day, you would look at me differently, because I know that you're a woman who treats work as important as your life. Goodman paused for a moment. He clenched his fists and said fiercely, but now, it seems that I've made a grave mistake. You're the same as that old woman. One old and one young. You're all liars. He looks like he only cares about his work, but I don't know how much of a sissy he is in the dark. In the end, he still secretly married a barbaric idiot. I don't understand what you're talking about. If you're not willing to continue working, you don't have to insult me. You can totally resign. I've never forced you to do the director's job. Lin Ruashi said coldly. Resign? Are you kidding me? Ha! Goodman's eyes were filled with mockery. I've done so much for Ulay for so many years. Why did I stay in Europe? What did I get? You're asking me to resign. Lin Ruashi kept quiet. She was a little afraid. After all, they were in a foreign country. Although she was Goodman's superior, it didn't mean that she could suppress him. Goodman smiled evilly. I won't resign. I still want to be the director of Ulay International. Lin Ruashi, if I can't get what I want, I won't let anyone else have it. How could that bullsh asterisk T surnamed Young marry you? You should have died a long time ago. You. Lin Ruashi widened her eyes. She never expected that Goodman would investigate her relationship with Yang Chung. Goodman didn't say anything else. He waved his hands and signaled the men in black to make their move. 5 black-clothed men entered the room in a single file. Using a strangely fast method, they captured Stern and Alice. Another one of them restrained Lin Ruashi and even Harry and his mother in the room. Harry's mother screamed in fear. However, no matter how she screamed, the people in the hospital couldn't hear her. It's useless. I've already deployed this hospital. I'm just waiting for you to come. Goodman smiled proudly. He walked to Lin Ruashi and extended his hand, wanting to lift Lin Ruashi's chin. Lin Ruashi's heart was in her throat when she was grabbed. Now that she was about to be humiliated by Goodman, she couldn't escape. She was so anxious that she almost fainted. The only thought in her mind was, why did that damned Yang Chun have to go out at this time of all times? She didn't know that the other party was taking action when Yang Chung wasn't around. Slap! The man in black who grabbed Lin Ruashi slapped Goodman's hand away and said numbly, Sir said that no one is allowed to touch the hostages before the plan is completed. A hint of viciousness flashed across Goodman's eyes, but he resisted the urge to touch Lin Ruashi. Next, the 5 men in black nimbly took out cotton cloth laced with anesthetic and knocked out Lin Ruashi, the Stern siblings, and the others before bringing them out of the ward. Goodman was the last to arrive. He turned around and scanned the empty ward with a sneer on his face. Yang Chung, who was on a cruise to the French military island in the English Channel, didn't know what was happening in the hospital. Speaking of which, he didn't have the habit of calling his women. Be it in Shanghai or abroad, he had been complained about by his women many times. Although Yang Chung wanted to correct it many times, he didn't call or send messages like other couples did. He missed his female friends in Shanghai. He even wanted to bring all of them to the beach of the Mediterranean Sea for a vacation, to bask in the sun, and to do some things that he loved to do. However, his rationality told him that if he really used force, Sister Lin would probably launch an atomic bomb at him instead of a Cold War. Perhaps it was because in the past, when he was growing up, it was too illusory to rely on communication, and there were always taboos like eavesdropping, signal interception, and so on. Yang Chun was still used to face-to-face communication. The Louis XVI cruise set off from the port of Le Havre at 8 o'clock sharp. The journey to the island only took half an hour, and that was under the condition that the cruise deliberately slowed down. There were more than 200 people participating in this secret meeting. Most of them were representatives from various countries' security departments. Their main focus was on the issue of Apollo and realm of gods. After all, they had to protect their own countries and leaders. On the other hand, the small number of special international organizations that were invited were more interested in the sword of Thanatos. After all, the death of a country's leader wouldn't affect them much. Panther and Takamagara were like that. Naturally, the Vatican and the Covenant of Darkness would fight for it even more. At the very least, they couldn't let the other party get it so easily. At 8:40 at night, the cruise steadily docked on the island guarded by the French army. This was also one of NATO's military deployment points in the English Channel. Usually, no ordinary ships were allowed to approach. More than 200 people participating in the secret meeting were dressed differently. Under the lead of Fodessa and other officials of the 7th Bureau, they alighted from the ship and walked along the coastline towards the only square building on the island. The square building occupied almost half of the island. From afar, the top of the building was actually a landing spot for fighter jets. Planes could take off and land directly from the roof. The design was not a waste of the island's land resources at all. The army on the island had been replaced by special forces. After all, ordinary soldiers had no right to know the contents of this meeting. Yang Chung leisurely followed at the back of the group. He was separated from Sauron and the rest, pretending not to know them. The people of the Sword and the Stone and Takamagara were obviously unfriendly towards him, especially the Cool Prince and the mysterious Nurerahayon. They would occasionally glare at him coldly. However, everyone knew that this wasn't the time for personal grudges, so it didn't bring much trouble to Yang Chung. After entering the building, the road began to slope downwards. Obviously, to prevent air raids, the internal space had been dug underground. Your Majesty Pluto, you seem absent-minded. A magnetic baritone voice rang in Yang Cheng's ears. Yang Chun tilted his head. The person walking beside him was Prince Sargeras of the Blood Race, whom he had met before. This guy was rather good at communicating, using some kind of voice transmission technique so that others wouldn't hear them. You're indeed a vampire who has lived for thousands of years. There's really no secret in front of you. You even saw through me, said Yang Chung half-jokingly. Sargeras smiled politely. Of the thousands of years that I can remember, perhaps only 100 or so years. I can't remember the things that happened before that. Moreover, human civilization has progressed so quickly. Actually, for us vampires who sleep all day long, the outside world is always full of novelty. On the other hand, Your Majesty Pluto, it seems that you don't care much about the Sword of Thanatos that many people are interested in. In my opinion, the Sword of Thanatos has the deepest connection with you. Ignoring Sargeras' doubtful and contemplative gaze, Yang Chung asked in return, I'm very curious. Why is your precious daughter, Miss Lilith, missing? Sargeras looked left and right, shrugged, and smiled. That child has always been very naughty. I don't know where she went. Humph. Yang Chung chuckled and shook his head. What an impatient father and daughter pair. I don't understand what you're talking about. Your Majesty Pluto, said Sargeras without changing his expression. Pretending to be confused, the two of them chatted as they entered the huge, brightly lit conference hall. Rows of tables and chairs were arranged in a semicircle, without a speck of dust. In front of the first few rows of seats, there were already some nameplates of the major countries and organizations. Yang Chung was an interloper, so he naturally didn't have a seat. Thus, he randomly found a seat at the back and sat down. He raised his feet and leaned on the chair in front of him. He He yawned and waited for the conference to begin. Since almost everyone present was an impatient person who pursued efficiency, no one cared about formality. Thus, the conference started very quickly. As the host and host representative, Fodessa first gave a report on the realm of God and Apollo incidents after he walked onto the stage. Then, he brought up the idea of hoping to unite the forces of all countries in the world to eradicate terrorist organizations. After a few NATO countries spoke some conventional words, the key question emerged. Who would be the leader of the anti-terrorism effort? Why should everyone cooperate with him? Chapter 533. For most of the attendees, the destruction caused by Apollo and the realm of God didn't directly affect their interests. Some organizations that didn't have a good relationship with NATO wouldn't mind Apollo destroying a few more NATO military bases or messing up the European Union by killing some Western politicians. Therefore, when Fodessa proposed an alliance against terrorism, most of the attendees chose to remain silent. Clad in a military uniform, Fodessa squinted his eyes and cursed in his heart. However, he knew that the attendees wouldn't take the initiative to stand out. Thus, Fodessa cleared his throat and said slowly, "We, France, believe that the realm of God is a mysterious and powerful terrorist organization. It isn't something that can be done by just one organization. Therefore, we are eager to find an ally. To be honest, France's special forces training is far inferior to many of our friends and organizations here. However, as the first country to be threatened, we definitely need a strong counterattack. In order to gain a strong ally, our higher-ups have decided to use the legendary artifact, the Sword of Thanatos, as the price. If everyone here is willing to be the main force of this anti-terrorism operation and assist us in the safety of the 7th Division, the Sword of Thanatos will belong to no one else." After Fodessa finished speaking, whispers broke out in the hall. Everyone understood that although France wasn't as powerful as many of the organizations here, it was impossible for them to forcefully take the sword. It wasn't that France wasn't easy to deal with, but the other organizations would target the sword-snatching organization as a target to be eliminated because it wasn't morally stable. No one would be foolish enough to stand out, even if they knew that France couldn't protect the Sword of Thanatos. The best move of the French Security Bureau's meeting this time was to let all the large organizations and important countries know that the sword was in their hands. In a sense, when everyone knew, no one dared to take it by force. Therefore, having a legitimate opportunity to obtain a divine artifact was more precious than anything else. While France provided this opportunity, its own interests would also be protected. If anyone only wanted the sword and did not care about France's survival, it would give the other organizations a chance to criticize them. Therefore, if anyone really wanted the Sword of Thanatos, they would have to be strong enough to protect France. In this way, among the organizations present, some of the organizations that were not competitive had already lost hope. They could only wait for the first-rate organizations to come forward and compete. I have a question. A white-haired man in a blue shirt sitting in the first row raised his hand lazily and spoke in broken English. He was the general of Takamagura, Nurerahayan, who had caused trouble for Yangcheng previously. The sudden shout perfectly drowned out the chaotic whispers below. Fodessa made a pleased gesture. "Mr. Nurerahayan from Takamagura, please speak." At this time, the katana in Nurerahayan's hand was used as a tickle, rubbing against Nurerahayan's back. With a yawn, Nurerahayan asked, "I'm very curious. Where did you get the Sword of Thanatos? Besides, you keep saying that you want us to cooperate with you, but we haven't even confirmed whether the sword is real or fake. What's the point?" After Nurerahayan finished speaking, many of the leaders of the organizations expressed their doubts in agreement, requesting to see the Sword of Thanatos first before proceeding to the next segment. Fodessa replied, "I only recently learned about the origin of this artifact from our director, Mr. Depnay. Previously, it was discovered by the shipwreck salvage team. After appraisal, they found that the sword was not an ordinary antique, so it was handed over to the 7th Bureau. We have sent a photo of the sword to the Vatican, the Dark Parliament, and the British Sword in the Stone. Everyone knew very well that these three organizations had the longest history and the most abundant ancient documents. We only announced this news after we received a positive answer from them. As he spoke, Fodessa gestured to the Vatican, the sword and the stone, and the others who were seated below the stage. Cardinal Cruyff of the Vatican is here today. Storm Lola of the Sword and the Stone has also brought her elites. Prince Sargeras of the Dark Parliament is also here. If you don't believe me, they can testify that this sword matches the appearance of the sword of Thanatos described in the ancient documents. Sitting in the middle of the front row was Cruyff, who had gray hair and a kind face. He had a funny onion nose and wore a red bishop's robe. He nodded with a smile. Lola and the rest of the Sword and the Stone didn't show any reaction, but it could be considered as tacit approval. As for Sargeras, he was smiling like a gentleman as usual. Everyone started whispering to each other. Fodessa's words were quite credible. After all, everyone knew that the Vatican and the Dark Parliament were archenemies. The Sword and the Stone was England's trump-card secret organization, which was across the sea from France. Their relationship with France was extremely delicate. Since they had come to a consensus, there was no doubt that it was fake. Of course, to show our sincerity on the French side, I will first let everyone see the sword of Thanatos that we are keeping. Fodessa smiled and nodded to his adjutant, Bolton, who was standing behind him. Fatty Bolton understood and directed a few Special Forces soldiers behind the podium to open a steel door behind the podium. Under everyone's gaze, a brightly lit passageway appeared behind the podium. For soldiers who had gone to retrieve the sword ran in quickly. This kind of interconnected design was everywhere in the base. It was very convenient for different regions to mobilize different troops and resources. It could also rapidly control the base's passageway and apprehend the enemy in case of an invasion. Many people in the venue were filled with anticipation. After all, most organizations didn't have a clear understanding of the deeds of the gods, and the concept of a divine weapon was unreal to them. Among the group of people waiting, Cardinal Cruyff of the Vatican subconsciously glanced at Sargeras, who was sitting upright not far away. The two representatives, one in the light and one in the dark, smiled and nodded to each other in a friendly and mysterious manner. Just as everyone was filled with anticipation, suddenly, a dull explosion came from the passageway behind the podium. Boom, boom, bang. Everyone present was shocked. They immediately looked at the brightly lit passageway, but didn't know what had happened. Fodessa, who was on the podium, was the most panicked. He thought that everything would go smoothly. Did something happen after all? Damn it! Someone must be trying to steal the divine weapon when no one is watching. Someone shouted from somewhere. Everyone, rush in. This is too despicable. Go stop him. Almost all of the 200 or so people had unique skills that were different from ordinary people. Those who could attend the secret meeting were all elites of their respective organizations. They were usually proud and arrogant. Now that they had come to see a divine weapon, it was snatched away before they could even see it. It was as if they were being toyed with. How could they tolerate it? In the blink of an eye, dozens of figures rushed into the passageway behind the podium. Their speed was so fast that they didn't seem human at all. Fodessa was stunned. If it weren't for the Special Forces soldiers, Bolton, and the other attendants pulling him to a corner, he would have been trampled on by them. It's over. What the hell is going on? Fodessa yelled furiously. Of course, there were some who didn't rush into the passageway. For example, the Vatican, the Sword and the Stone, Takamagara, and the Jaguar, who were the leaders, didn't leave. When there were only dozens of people left, the onion-nosed Archbishop Cruyff suddenly stood up and smiled calmly at Prince Sargeras, who was sitting leisurely opposite him. He said, "Prince Sargeras, do you still remember me?" Sargeras frowned. I haven't been active in the Vatican for almost a century. Those I know are probably long dead. But I know you." Cruyff smiled. "While I was a 10-year-old child, I met you once with my priest. More than 90 years have passed, and you're still the same. I, on the other hand, am even older than my priest." Sargeras revealed a look of realization. He smiled and asked, "What are you trying to say, child?" The old Archbishop Cruyff, who was over 100 years old, being called a child made the others feel awkward. But considering Prince Sargeras' age, it wasn't wrong at all. My priest is the previous cardinal of the German district, Belsard, Cruyff said with narrowed eyes. Sargeras was taken aback. He pondered for a moment, then nodded. So it's him. Ah, I remember now. Seems like you want to avenge your priest. Ha ha. The child of the cardinal I killed more than 90 years ago has become a cardinal again. Do you want to avenge me? It's not the first time in my long life, but I'm still very interested. Cruyff wasn't angry at Sargeras' mockery. He chuckled and said, I'm already someone who's going to meet the Lord soon. Being able to fight a prince is the last thing I can do for the Vatican. But before that, there's a naughty lady here. Should we stop her? Cruyff's words puzzled everyone present. What miss? What steps? Yang Chung, who was sitting at the back, raised his head and looked at the ceiling of the conference hall. He smiled but didn't say anything. Suddenly, Archbishop Cruyff waved his hand. His red sleeves billowed, and a majestic aura caused his hair and beard to dance in the air. His entire body shone with a dazzling milky white light. Holy light, Cruyff shouted. A 2-meter-wide platinum pillar of light shot up from beneath his feet. The pillar of light was solid. When it touched the solid ceiling of the conference hall made of metal and concrete, it didn't stop at all. It completely shattered the material. With an unstoppable momentum, the pillar of light pierced through the ceiling and broke through the darkness above the island. Bastard Vatican! A feminine cry came from outside the ceiling, as if she had been frightened by something terrifying. Many people in the conference hall had an impression of that voice. Wasn't that Sargeras' daughter, Lilith? Chapter 534. Hearing Lilith shout, almost everyone understood what Cruyff meant. Many immediately glared at Sargeras. Clearly, the situation on the island was Lilith's doing. As her father, Sargeras had to be the mastermind. Outside the hole penetrated by the beam of light, Lilith stood in a sexy black leather outfit. On her back, a pair of bewitching bat wings formed from blood were gradually dissipating. And in Lilith's arms, there was a long box wrapped in black metal. Unsurprisingly, that was the sword of Thanatos that Lilith had stolen from the French Special Forces while everyone was in a meeting. Are you trying to use the blood spell, Blood Feather, to fly off the island with the divine weapon? Even if the Vanjua clan is a noble of the 13 blood clans, they can't help but sneak around. What a shameful blood clan, Cruyff said sarcastically. Lilith, who had a small part of her back injured by the holy light, landed on the roof. She hugged the black box and scolded the Vatican below. We've been fighting for more than 10 centuries, and all you can do is spout nonsense. Are you pigs? Although she was scolding them, Lilith didn't escape. She knew that since she had been discovered, escape was impossible. She could only fight head-on while recovering from her injuries. Sargeras wasn't angry. He stood up slowly and smiled. From the beginning, I didn't intend to succeed with this method. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come with just Lilith. If one of the two didn't show up, it would be too easy to be seen through. So, little doll, you don't have to think that you're very smart. I'm also very curious. Is Prince Sargeras so confident in his own strength that he really only needs to bring an elder here to snatch the divine weapon? Cruyff said mockingly. Sargeras let out a strange smile. Unless someone wants to make a move, otherwise, I don't think there's any problem. As he spoke, Sargeras very subtly glanced at the seat behind him, but the person he was alluding to shamefully pretended to know nothing. Sargeras, you're underestimating us. The middle-aged man who had been by Cruyff's side stepped forward and said, Bishop Cruyff has surpassed the previous bishop. You and your daughter won't be able to escape today. Yang Chung sat at the back and blinked. He had seen that burly man before. He was the leader of the Crusaders, Gabriel, who had once led a team to Zhonghai to fight for the Holy Grail. This guy was quite strong. Although he had been suppressed back then, he could be considered to be on par with Lilith. With a red-robed archbishop like Cruyff around, he would definitely be able to provide more support. In that case, Lilith would be held back by Gabriel. Sauron and the other members of Sea Eagles and Zero saw that Yang Chung did not move, so they sat firmly in their seats. As long as Yang Chung did not give any orders, they were not interested in participating. Abbess Yin Miao, who was alone, was even more direct. She simply changed her seat and came to Yang Cheng's side, not wanting to pay attention to anything. At that moment, Fodessa and the other members of the French Security Bureau were at a loss. Witnessing Bishop Cruyff's holy light, they were all confused what holy light was. Why did it look like a laser cannon? Even concrete and special mixed metals could be turned into dust. What would happen if a person was grazed by it? Perhaps even an aircraft carrier would be penetrated by it. Although Fodessa and the others had decent combat power as special forces, they could only watch silently in the face of a battle that was beyond the level of humans, even if they were the hosts, even if they were extremely aggrieved. As for the others, although Takamagura, the sword in the stone, and the others were ready to join the battle at any time, they were not in a hurry to attack either side. The 1,000-year grudge between the Vatican and the Covenant of Darkness would inevitably lead to a big fight. Naturally, they were willing to wait for the scene of both sides suffering before reaping the benefits. However, it just so happened that some blind agents from other organizations had begun to play petty tricks. A few agents from the Nordic countries who could not find Lilith in the tunnel rushed back. Seeing that the Vatican and the Covenant of Darkness were about to clash, and that Lilith was alone on the roof, holding a long black box, their eyes immediately turned red. Usually, they would not have the guts to do so, but faced with a divine artifact, the huge temptation drove them crazy. Bishop Cruyff, you guys deal with the Blood Race Prince. We'll deal with the female vampire. A few agents who had been fighting in the snowfield for years could be considered first-rate experts. Their levels were not inferior to the Sea Eagles, and with a simple leap, they had already flown to the roof that was a few feet high. A trace of viciousness flashed across Lilith's eyes, and her mouth was full of a sneer. Idiots! Muttering to herself, Lilith, who was crouching, suddenly pulled out the butcher's knife that was as bright as moonlight from her back. Before the agents could attack, she swung it horizontally. Swoosh! After a crisp sound, blood and water splattered, and 3 Nordic agents who wanted to surround her were instantly cut in half at the waist. Even if I'm slightly injured, you don't deserve to come near me. Lilith snorted coldly and lowered her head to say to Sargeras, Father, are you going to fight or not? My wound has already recovered. I'm anxious to see what the sword inside is like. Some of the organization members who were planning to fight for the sword gasped. They had never really fought with the blood race, but they did not expect the other party to be so powerful. In the blink of an eye, 70% of the people present had given up on the fight for the Sword of Thanatos. They did not want to make unnecessary sacrifices. At the back, Yang Chen carefully examined the black box in Lilith's hands for a while, then began to focus on everything around him. Your Majesty Pluto, is there a real divine artifact in that box? Sauron asked curiously. They could not determine whether a divine artifact was real or not. Yang Chen nodded. I can feel a weak divine power, but it's definitely divine power, and it's a kind of dull divine power. Even if it's not Thanatos sort of Thanatos, it's definitely another divine artifact. The Holy Grail I encountered in Zhonghai previously had a kind of divine power of light. This thing this time is about the same level as that one. I heard that the Holy Grail and Godstone were both stolen by a mysterious god. It won't be stolen again this time, right? Sauron asked worriedly. Yang Chung sighed. All I could do is keep an eye on them. I don't know if they'll appear or if they'll be able to stop them. Yang Chung was not modest. Yang Chung always felt that the person who took away the divine power from the Holy Grail and Godstone was stronger than him. Moreover, if the other party did not appear on his own, Yang Chung would definitely not be able to detect him. At this time, the people from the Vatican finally began to move. Light of light. As Cruyff's red sleeves fluttered, 2 pure white beams of light landed on Gabriel, who was beside him. Around Gabriel's body, a light armor could be faintly seen. Gabriel, I'll leave that elder-level blood breed to you, Cruyff ordered with a calm expression. Gabriel knelt on one knee and made a knight's salute, saying loudly, Yes, your eminence. With that, Gabriel's body suddenly flew up like a white arc of light. He unsheathed the rusty greatsword on his back. The greatsword was surrounded by a platinum halo, and he viciously swung it at Lilith, who was on the roof. Lilith, who was hugging the black box, had a grave expression. She did not dare to resist or counterattack and directly dodged. Bang! The great sword fell, and gravel and metal flew in all directions. The hole in the roof widened by a few meters, and many cracks appeared on the roof. Its power was astonishing. This scene fell into Yang Cheng's eyes, and even Yang Cheng was a little surprised. Gabriel's speed and strength were more than twice as strong as before. It seemed that the Cardinal of the Vatican, with profound cultivation, was indeed invaluable. Just by casting a blessing spell, a warrior could be reborn in a short period of time. Sargeras saw his daughter entangled with Gabriel, holding the black box in one hand and wielding the butcher knife with the other. He could not help but frown, feeling nervous and alarmed. "Prince, your opponent is us." Cruyff's expression darkened. At the same time, the two blond young men who had been standing behind Cruyff without saying a word surrounded Sargeras on both sides. Although the two men's eyes were fixed on Sargeras, they looked extremely empty, as if they had no souls. Sargeras sneered, "No wonder you only brought 3 people. So apart from the leader of the Crusaders, the other 2 are holy bodies. You should be afraid because this is definitely not what you think it is," Cruyff said. "Do you think I haven't seen the holy bodies of the Vatican?" "This is no stranger to me," Sargeras said, and a thick black aura began to rise from his body, pulsating like a living creature. "Demon flame." Cruyff's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. The legendary demon flame that is several times stronger than the high-level blood spell of the blood race, blood flame. As expected of the 3rd generation of the blood race, the generation closest to God, to have even mastered the legendary blood spell. "Kid, you're quite knowledgeable." The black flame-like energy adhered to Sargeras' body and started to burn without any heat. Many of the spectators subconsciously retreated far away, because this strange energy emitted an aura like the abyss of hell, which made them cower in fear. Sitting beside Yang Cheng, Abyssinian Miao couldn't help but ask in confusion, "Why do those 2 young men from the Vatican look like dead people? What's a holy body?" Yang Cheng watched the fight between Gabriel and Lilith in midair as he explained, "As far as I know, the holy body of the Vatican refers to the body of a human believer with an absolutely pure soul and without any evil thoughts. If such a person is strong enough, they can perform the light spell of Angel's Descent." "Angel's Descent?" Abyssinian Miao was shocked. "Could it be?" Yang Cheng nodded. "That's right. Although I don't know the exact origin of angels, they can indeed attach angels to their holy bodies for a short period of time, giving them the fighting power of angels. Although angels aren't considered gods, it's true that they use divine power. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it in person. However, the angels that can be summoned are different depending on the strength of the soul. If they're weaker than 4-winged angels, they're mid-level angels. In that case, they won't be able to deal any damage to an ancestor-level dark creature like Sargeras." Just as Yang Cheng was explaining, a dazzling white meteor shower started falling around Cruyff and the 2 holy bodies. White light flashed in the venue, and everyone stared blankly at the triangular area of the Vatican. No one had ever felt such a holy aura before. So they're here." Sargeras, who was in the dark magic flames, felt a little uncomfortable, but he didn't act rashly. He knew that the light spell of Angel's Descent was actually one of the most explosive points of the power of light during the casting process. If he attacked at that moment, his movements would definitely be slowed down, and his opponents would easily evade him. Sargeras believed that even if 2 4-winged angels appeared along with Cruyff, he would still be able to get rid of them with some time. But in the next second, Sargeras' heart suddenly skipped a beat. After the 2 golden-haired young men floated in the air, 2 beams of golden light descended from the sky, and the 2 of them seemed to be plated with a layer of gold. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, a white ball of light appeared behind the 2 of them. The milky white ball of light flickered for a while, and then, slowly and gently, blossomed like a huge transparent flower petal. Six wings?" Sargeras couldn't help but mumble. Even though Sargeras had lived for 1,000 years, he still momentarily lost his composure when he saw the two six-winged angels floating in the air. Lilith, who had been fighting with Gabriel, noticed the situation below and exclaimed in surprise. In a moment of carelessness, Gabriel cut open a wound on her back. Yang Chun couldn't help but whistle at the huge change in the scene. He clicked his tongue and said, "Sargeras is going to have a hard time this time. Six-winged, even if it's not the highest level of blazing angels, throne angels and cherubim angels aren't ordinary beings." Sargeras' expression is probably because he's never seen a six-winged angel summoned by the Vatican. Seeing Yang Cheng's gloating expression, Abbess Yun Miao, Sauron, and the rest broke out in a cold sweat. Chapter 535. Indeed, just as Yang Cheng had said, Sargeras, who had been full of confidence in the battle, felt a little nervous at the start. As soon as the battle prowess of the two six-winged angels was revealed, the entire conference hall trembled. After the two six-winged angels' possession was completed, the light curtain-like wings on their backs fluttered, and the holy light was extremely dazzling to the eyes of those who were near. And in the eyes of the audience, the two angels instantly condensed a huge platinum sword in their hands. This sword was naturally not a material object, but the pure light, divine power of the angels. The demon flames around Sargeras' body burned more fiercely as the light, divine power around him continued to expand. And in Sargeras' hand, the black demon flames also condensed into a relatively slender night sword. "Creature of darkness, today I, Cruyff, shall end your 1,000-year lifespan." The red-robed bishop shouted and waved his hands above his head. After putting his palms together, a slender white beam of light shot straight up to the roof. The beam of light broke through the roof and pierced the dark night sky, as if it had cut the dark night sky in half. Rain of holy light. As Cruyff cast the spell, everyone in the conference hall suddenly realized that out of nowhere, droplets of light began to rain down on the conference hall. The milky white light droplets fell continuously and landed on everyone's bodies, bringing warmth to them. However, when the light droplets landed on Sargeras and Lilith, who were fighting on the roof, the father and daughter of the vampire race did not feel good. When the demon flames around Sargeras' body came into contact with the light droplets, green smoke rose. They kept colliding and rubbing against each other, consuming each other. And Lilith had also used a blood spell to create a shield, barely blocking the light droplets outside of her body. Otherwise, her body would have been charred the moment it came into contact with the light droplets. But obviously, Cruyff's intention in casting such a large-scale light spell wasn't to hurt Sargeras and his daughter. To a greater extent, it was to restrict the enemy and increase the combat power of the two six-winged angels on his side. There was a time limit to the angels' descent, so Cruyff wanted to end the battle in the shortest time possible by using his divine power. Rustle, rustle. Two streaks of light suddenly descended from the sky, and two large swords radiating light in all directions slashed towards Sargeras from the left and right. Sargeras snorted coldly. He didn't dodge. He held the black, flaming longsword in front of him and forcefully clashed with the two great swords. Clang! Clang! The lightning-like lightsaber was actually stopped by Sargeras with one hand, as expected of a blood-breed grand prince. He can even withstand this. Abbess Yun Miao, who was watching from afar, exclaimed. Yang Cheng curled his lips. The six-winged seraphim isn't that easy to deal with. In the next moment, just when Sargeras thought he had withstood this wave of attacks, he suddenly discovered that he had been tricked. Boom, boom. Two explosive sounds rang out, and the huge lightsabers in the hands of the two six-winged angels actually grew several feet from their original 2 meters long. The sword of light seemed to have been filled with high-pressure gas. The sword could not withstand the huge pressure and directly shattered and expanded. The incomparably sharp light screen transformed into countless balls of light and mist, directly drowning Sargeras' dark body. The marble floor where Sargeras was standing also cracked, shattered, collapsed, and splattered. The huge energy shockwave caused the surrounding tables, chairs, and podiums to all be flipped and torn apart. It was as if a pocket-sized missile had exploded on the scene. Retreat, quick! Many organizations' representatives immediately ordered their people to retreat far away, and some even fled the venue. They really wanted to see the battle scene between the top forces in the world, but they wanted to protect their own lives more than anything else. Although the Covenant of Darkness and the Vatican had each sent a father and daughter pair in a team of 4, these people represented the highest level of power on both sides. When they fought, it was either you die or I die. They didn't care about the people around them at all. When everyone saw that the place where Sargeras was standing had collapsed into a deep hole, they thought that he had been defeated. However, they suddenly heard an angry roar from Sargeras, and the deep black, demonic flames swept out from the depths of the hole like a raging storm and a tsunami, sweeping and exploding. The 2 six-winged angels didn't fight it head-on, and quickly retreated into the air to avoid the eruption of the flames. Sargeras' body floated in the air, but his clothes were already a little messy. His eyes had sunk into a demonic blood-red color, and his sharp vampire fangs were already bared. He was obviously extremely angry, as expected of a 6-winged angel. Even a thrown angel is not easy to deal with. Looks like I have to use my full strength. After saying that, the flames around Sargeras' body surged again, and his gaze was fixed on Cruyff, who had been buffing the angels and Gabriel with blessings and light spells. The best way to deal with an angel was to find a weakness. Obviously, the vulnerable red-robed bishop was the breakthrough point that Sargeras had identified. Sargeras' body flashed in the air, and when the Black Knight's sword stabbed forward again, he was already a few meters away from Cruyff. Cruyff wasn't stupid. He had already condensed a light screen in front of him, ready to block Sargeras' sudden attack. Can you block it?" Sargeras roared, but he didn't expect that before he could touch the defensive light screen, an angel had already blocked in front of him. The 3 pairs of light wings were like the most flexible shields gathering in front of the angel. The 6 wings gathered at the densest point, blocking Sargeras' full-strength strike. Damn angel! The holy wings looked soft, but they couldn't be pierced by the sharp, demonic flame sword at all. After a series of explosions, Sargeras was shaken away. At this time, because of the continuous violent tremors, the roof of the building had collapsed and cracks everywhere. It could be said that the roof no longer existed. Under the boundless night sky, the battle between darkness and light became more and more intense. Lilith had originally thought that with her father, Sargeras, taking the sword of Thanatos would be a piece of cake. Moreover, the only person who could stop them, Yang Chung, had already clearly expressed his disinterest. What she didn't expect was that the Vatican actually had 2 holy bodies that could descend from 6-winged angels. If she had known this, the Camarilla's secret society wouldn't have sent just one prince, Sargeras. At least 2 princes would come to have absolute confidence in taking them down. Which, don't get distracted. Your opponent is me. Gabriel, who was getting more and more courageous, swung his sword past Lilith's ear. Frustrated, Lilith almost didn't dodge it. Holding the sword of Thanatos in one hand and waving the butcher's knife in the other, Lilith clenched her teeth in anger. If it weren't for the red-robed bishops giving Gabriel blessings, she would have long since killed this crusader leader. If she could get rid of Gabriel, she could at least go down and help her father deal with the 2 angels. Even if she could help him escape, that would be good. But all of this was just a dream. Lilith knew that it all depended on whether Sargeras, with his 1,000 years of cultivation, could withstand this disaster. Prince Sargeras didn't have to be in such a fierce battle. Although 6-winged angels were far more powerful than 4-winged angels. Even if 2 6-winged angels joined forces, they wouldn't be able to defeat the demigod-level power of a 3rd-generation blood clan. The key was that Cruyff would cast blessings from time to time, sneakily shoot arrows, a holy light spell, a cross-light bomb, or a few light pillars of judgment. Even if these spells didn't cause much damage, Sargeras had to expend a lot of energy to dodge and block them. In this way, Sargeras was fighting 1 against 3. Moreover, The entire area was raining holy light rain, which boosted the Vatican's strength. Such a high-level auxiliary light spell couldn't be easily used if not for Cruyff's 100-plus years of cultivation. The 12 wings of the two six-winged angels rapidly scattered feathers that looked like pieces of light. These feathers, condensed with pure divine power of light, looked incomparably beautiful, but were unimaginably destructive to dark creatures. Sargeras opened a scarlet shield, and the demonic flames around him formed a tornado-like aura. He broke a hole and shot straight at one of the angels. After the angel dodged continuously, the light sword in his hand expanded again, like a giant hand of a god slamming the ground. Bang! More than 100 square meters of marble collapsed where Sargeras was standing. Mud and rocks flew dozens of meters away. The hundreds of people on the island who were watching the raging battle, as well as the special forces guarding the outer perimeter of the island, had already retreated far away. Yang Chung, Abbas Yimiao, and the rest didn't run too far. Takamagura, Panther, and the Sword in the Stone were also standing closest to the battle. Fodessa and the other officers of the Security Bureau didn't run too far away because they were fulfilling their duties. However, a few younger officers were about to wet their pants. Are these guys still human? Why do they look like sci-fi movies? Are they special effects? The two six-winged angels and Sargeras were locked in a stalemate. It was hard to tell who would win. Either the black demonic flames burned the prairie, or the holy swords of light destroyed everything. The ground had been flipped a few times, and the holes in the cave were evidence of the fierce battle. At this moment, a red light flashed in Sargeras' eyes. Suddenly, his figure shook, and 3 identical figures appeared in mid-air. The 3 Sargeras stood in different positions, but they all held a 6-meter-tall, blazing demonic flame sword in their hands. They attacked the 2 angels at the same time. The blood clone spell can create so many. Yang Chung was entranced, but then he frowned. No, these aren't blood clones.